Dobbs got the footage on lock. John Ward slicing through the pixels non-stop. Sahara Cosmos, Ricardo Calvario, Jason Huffman, Sham in 7-Eleven, Alexander Cheskiewicz. We're all in. Mars Disclosure Live, ripping the lies apart tonight. Pyramids on Mars, life in the dirt, ancient cities buried. Feel the hurt. Mars Disclosure Live, truth is burning through the red sky. We expose the history, the nuked out past, potential for life. It's ours at last. It's ours at last.
Sponsored by Spores MD for your personal mind-body wellness journey.
I don't know why it does that, but that's okay. Greetings, humans. The chat is already hopping right now. Welcome back to Mars Disclosure Live, hosted by Dave's Multiverse, where we love poking the cosmic bear. I'm Dave, your host, and today we're diving headfirst into the wild, violent past of the Red Planet. First, we're going to talk about Graham Hancock's groundbreaking and thought-provoking book on Mars. Then we're breaking down catastrophism on Mars with Brian Corey Dobbs, including his mind-blowing take on the massive scar and all the other planet-shattering disasters that turned a once-thriving blue world into the dusty red rock we see today. We're also zooming in on some seriously suspicious remnants of potential megalithic structures that the legendary John Ward has spotted, as well as others hiding in NASA imagery. And because all you legends in the chat always flood us with killer questions, we're going to save every single one, and we'll tackle as many as we can in a big Q&A at the end. Plus, we're leaving the floor wide open for even more live questions, so buckle up. This is going to be explosive. Let's get into it. I'm going to introduce the panel today, and I've got a question for each and every one of you. So first up, and because I forgot her last week, meet Sarah Cosmos from the University Unveiled Podcast and Institute for Natural Philosophy. She's a cosmic whirlwind who fearlessly stirs the pot with hidden truths and mind-expanding big picture vibes. With her infectious energy and zero-filter insights, she'll have you seeing Mars and the multiverse in ways that make the mainstream squirm. Sarah, welcome back to Mars Disclosure Live. And I've got a question. You're welcome. I got a question for you. If you had the chance to go to Mars next year with a 50% chance of survival, would you go?
50%. I'm going to pass. No, I'm not going.
Not going?
No, I'll stay here and hold down the fort.
Sounds good. Any reason why?
I'm going to just watch someone else do it first. I figure that's probably the safest course there.
Awesome. Next up, we've got my lovely producer, Miss Indonesia Jones, Megan Gibson. Bringing the spark is Megan. And with her bubbly chaos, endless curiosity, and eagle eye for the juicy details, she keeps the show zooming along while sneakily asking the questions everyone else is scared to touch. Megan, welcome back. Would you go to Mars with a 50% chance of survival?
Yeah, I think I'd like better odds. I'm with Sarah. We'll be here. We'll let you guys do it first, and then we'll think about it.
I'm wondering if everyone's going to say that, but I know my answer. Next up, Jason Huffman, better known as Shaman 711. From the Shaman and Philosopher podcast, this charismatic firecracker mixes razor-sharp research with philosophical fireworks to connect Mars anomalies to humanity's bigger cosmic story. He found something really cool today. Maybe we'll talk about that as well. So prepare for some delightfully dangerous mind sparks from Jason. Welcome back, buddy. Are you going to Mars?
Charismatic firecracker. I'm not sure if I'm okay with that. Dave, no, I'm kidding. That's where I'm from. The word charismatic defines a form of the Christian religion that is very looked down upon because they handle snakes and whatnot. So, but you wouldn't know that if you weren't from down around here. So thank you, Dave. That was beautiful, beautiful words, man. I'm doing very well as always. I'm happy to be here to hang out with John Ward, Brian Corey Dobbs, and really look into the Mars things. Yeah, the piece I found today, I've got it around here, man. I was actually just looking for it. There's artifacts falling out of my pockets. When I go to Mars, there's like. When I go to Mars 50-50, honest, Dave, I think 50-50 is about the best of us have any day we wake up here on this planet and walk out of it and decide we're going to speak the truth, try to be ourselves, and, go about the business we go about. And I personally would be excited to check out these megaliths on Mars that remind me, or these ruined anomalies on Mars that remind me so much of what I find here on this Earth. So I'd do it, bro. It's 50-50 here anyway, if you get honest with yourself.
I love that answer. The chat. I meant to ask the chat the same question, but they're already answering. Got not a chance. I'm going. I like this take. If I was 90 years old, I would take the chance. Like why the hell not, right? Next up, Ricardo Calvario, dynamic independent researcher from the Institute for Natural Philosophy, as well as the co-host of the Shaman and Philosopher podcast. He's here to happily flip the history books upside down. He's digging up ancient resonance and cheeky alternative philosophies that make mainstream narratives sweat, and he does it with deep, delicious, mind-bending flair. He's also the author of The Resonant Earth and blanking on the other one.
Stardust.
And Stardust. You can get those on Amazon and I think anywhere you find books. Ricardo, welcome back to Mars Disclosure Live. How are you today? And are you going to Mars with a 50-50 chance of survival?
Well, thank you for having me. And good evening to everybody in the panel and in the chat and watching the video later on. As to go with a 50-50 chance, I think there's still things here I love more than to go to Mars. So when there is a 100% chance, then I might take those things that I love and go there. But until then, I think I'll pass.
Yeah, because you can take the things with you that you cherish, right? Like either the people or the things. I like that answer.
I'm a little bit like Frodo. I'm still infatuated with the little rivers.
I like to think I'm like Frodo too. More like Legolas. I want to be Legolas.
Yeah, but we're still going to hop a plane to Portugal tomorrow morning there, Frodo.
Now 6 p.m. 6 p.m.
In the state of the world, that's pretty brave right there. I think your odds are probably more like 40-60, bro, to be honest. But good luck.
Ricardo, how long are you going to be in Portugal? Because I'm going to be in Portugal in like early July for a couple days.
Early July, I will still be in Portugal.
Maybe we can hook up. We'll talk about that later.
Sure.
Next up, get ready for the legendary John Ward, trailblazing independent Mars researcher and graphic design ninja with a master at catching anomalous structures, megaliths, and sneaky artifacts NASA probably wishes stayed hidden in their own photos. His razor-sharp eyes rewriting the Red Planet story and having way too much fun doing it. First, I got two questions for you. Are you going to Mars with a 50-50 chance? And would you tell us about your background there? You got a cool virtual background going on there.
Sure. Thanks for the intro, Dave. I'll go, but there must be a guaranteed trip home, not a one-way trip.
Okay. So
must
50-50.
be a two-way, a return ticket, plus I want a dedicated smoking section for Jason and myself.
What is that? I love these demands.
We got to have a smoking car, and they better have a little espresso of some sort.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And how about a toilet that works?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah.
Optional. I'll use the vacuum tube if needed.
We need a janitor as well. You're right. And behind me, that is Mars, the god of war, the Roman god of war.
And you gave me an interesting factoid about that before we got started, about the name.
Oh, Cairo in Egypt. The other name for it is Camp of Mars.
Oh.
Weird.
Yep.
That is weird.
And that's it.
And last but not least, anchoring this crew of cosmic troublemakers is award-winning filmmaker and fearless journalist Brian Corey Dobbs, the mastermind behind the groundbreaking Blue Planet Red. You can find it on Amazon Prime. He's out here boldly dropping bombshells about ancient Martian life, wild structures, and game-changing events that make the official story look downright embarrassed. And, you know, I only own 2 movies on Amazon Prime. One of them is Blue Planet Red, and the other one is the first Lord of the Rings movie. It was like an animated film that came out in 1978. So there you go, Brian. Are you going with a 50-50 chance?
I'm gonna let Elon prove the concept.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we gotta go. I mean, Brian, that comic strip about me and you finding all these things, we gotta go, man.
You know, I want somebody to go. I'm not the outdoorsy type. I'm trying to be. Shaman is inspiring me. But I do have to ask though, man. I see a bunch of people online aboard the whole Elon Musk hype train. Let's go to Mars, et cetera, et cetera. And I do have to wonder if some of these people know that I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure that they don't know that there's like a breathable atmosphere there. Like they post all this stuff about going and living on Mars, and I don't know if people understand that it's not really hospitable for people just to go and like live there. So I just question the intelligence of the general population just based on what I'm seeing online. It's just really troubling to see.
You just have to imagine the middle of the driest desert, right? And then remove the air.
Right.
If you can survive on top of Mount Everest or Kilimanjaro without an oxygen mask, you can make it.
No, it's different.
There are pockets of
because
breathable.
We were just talking about movies last week. I mean, if you guys have seen Total Recall, like, yeah, that's what it's gonna be like when Arnold gets sucked out. So, you know, until they fix that, I don't know.
Of course, there's an oxygen generator in that huge pyramid that I found, and a couple in Gary's as well.
We just have to hit it with the fingers, right?
Well, to your point about intelligence, Brian, we do have a lot to fix down here on Earth. This is true. So fascination with going to Mars. We might want to get it right down here in the mud first before we go to the desert without air.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it to turn into like Ghosts of Mars with Ice Cube, where ancient spirits possess all the people and then they turn into maniacs. That would be bad. But I'm definitely going, guys. My only demand is I want a group of people that like I really connect with and really share the same vibe as me. In the movie Mission to Mars, the first people who landed, only one person survived. It was Don Cheadle's character, Luke Graham. And when they found him down there, he had totally lost his shit. Okay. He went completely nuts. And that's what happens. We need each other. Isolation will drive you insane. And so I need people with me, and I'll go for a first mission to start terraforming. I'm down. Even with my sciatica.
Oh, dude, sorry to hear about that, man.
So yeah, in the chat's popping. We got a bunch of people up in the chat on all different channels. I just want to thank everyone. Go ahead and throw your questions in there. We'll try to save as many as we can and get back to them. We've got 2 presentations. We're going to start with, we're going to start with Shaman's going to start us off with Graham Hancock's book.
I'm going to tee up Brian is what I'm going to do. That's what I'll do for us here, because it was Brian's work that brought this about, and it was my comment to him that we thought we would share with the audience. The only backstory to know is that I was introduced to Graham Hancock not long before the whole world was, I guess, with the Ancient Apocalypse, series. But before that hit, I found his books because, let's just say it's a long story. I was guided to his work, right? And man, I ate it up. I ate through what I was needing. It started with America Before. I go back to, the gods and work my way forward, right? Ending with Underworld. And then I put it aside and I get on with my work because I got what I needed from it, right? So there I am thinking I'm a pretty, decent understander of Graham Hancock. I'd watched lots of his speeches because if I'm going to take in a gentleman's work, like sort of the gentleman here, I want to vibe that they're good dudes. You know what I'm saying? That's just the way I roll before I take in your work, right? So I took in his work and I see Brian's post the other day and Brian says, "Hey, have you seen Graham Hancock's book on Mars?" And I'm like, "Well, when the hell did that come out?" And Brian's post educated me quite wonderfully on precisely when it did come out. It's been out for a very long time. And being here on the Mars panel, being sort of a follower of Graham Hancock's work and a big supporter and even fan, not knowing about this seemed silly to not bring it up, having found myself sitting here arguing, I assume, for what many are the things that got argued for here in this book. So I immediately sent Brian a thank you, and I was like, dude, this is so cool because this should just never entered my knowing or my field of vision, and now I'm very excited and sort of honored to be finding myself here on this panel. I like full circles in life, man, and I like seeing things complete themselves. And just as I saw Jean on Mike and Dave's show so long ago, and I said, that is an amazing dude, and now I sit here. I saw sort of a circle here, right? And it's all thanks to Brian. So that's the tee up I have for you is a thank you, Brian, for bringing this to my own attention. And here you go. Bring it to some other folks.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Curious, Ricardo, were you familiar with this book?
I was familiar with his presentation, but not with the book.
Okay. Yeah, this came out a while ago, man, just really a few years after Fingerprints. And this was one of his, I guess, his earlier books.
I think inspired by Hoagland to a certain point, I think. But
well, yeah. And in this book, he talks a lot about essentially what used to be what is referred to as the Independent Mars Investigative Team, which is a group of people, a group of scientists that were organized by this man named Richard Hoagland, who was a journalist himself and did kind of what I'm doing right now, which is highlighting the work of the actual people studying this stuff. But yeah, so Graham Hancock referenced, he gave the history of Viking, which was, this pivotal mission by NASA. This is where I learned about all this stuff, and this was just a few years ago. And it was just so odd to me. I had just got done reading Fingerprints of the Gods, and then I wanted to know more about this cool guy, Graham Hancock. I go look at his list of books, and he's got something about Mars. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Like, if he's talking about pyramids over here, what interest does this guy have about Mars? Where's that going? And so I had to pick it up, and I read it. And it was here where I was introduced to a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. So it really served as a good entry point. And while all of the photos in the book are kind of outdated at this point, there was still enough there based off of the 1976 Viking imagery to start talking about some of this stuff. And, I don't know if Graham has been following Mars since. We're talking about a book that was published, I don't know, right around the turn of the century. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it was, I think it was sometime between 1998 and 2000, somewhere around there, because it was before they re-imaged the face to give us a better look at it. And all we had was this off-axis look of the face, and that was what made it into the book. So they hadn't yet got to the re-imaging of the face, which was, around 2000, 1990, 2000. I forget exactly what year it was. But regardless, he talks a lot about the microbial biology experiments and all the controversy there. But now, this book was written before the Curiosity rover found the organic material in the soil. So there's a lot that has happened since the publication of this book. I don't know if Graham has been keeping up with this, but if he hasn't, like, we've got a lot to catch him up on, because I hear from people every time I bring this up, like, this is the one book that he doesn't really like to talk about anymore. And I think if that's true, then I suspect that's simply because he just hasn't seen the stuff that we've seen, and he doesn't know people like Jean Ward and Gary Legier and Rami and all these other guys who have made these significant discoveries on Mars using resolution imagery that NASA has collected based off of their later missions. So anyway, there's about a third of the book that likes to try to make a connection between Egypt and Mars, pyramids, and the face being interpreted like a sphinx with a headdress sort of thing.
Yeah, because this is from his Robert Duvall period.
Yes, this was co-written with Robert Duvall.
Oh, see, so the thing is, you have to. Most people have met or read Graham from the last 10 to 15 years, but for those that are seeing his work for 30 years plus, there is many faces of Graham Hancock. So the single fact that this book is now not available shows you that he's, like many other things that he wrote in the past, that he no longer supports or no longer wish to talk to, he doesn't bring them up. So, and a lot have changed in the last 30 years. If you go back to his period of appearances in Project Camelot and Project Avalon and early conferences, the things he spoke, if he's asked now, I believe he's going to change the subject and become a bit embarrassed because he doesn't follow them anymore. So, and he left people along the way. Robert Duvall was one of them. Robert Schoch was another. So,
what do you mean he left them?
Well, he worked with them and he completely cut ties with.
Really? I didn't realize he completely cut ties with Robert Duvall. I thought they were besties. They wrote like 4 books together. I have
and I've heard him talk about reaching out to Schoch and in fact them being back to talking, and that I think the fallout really had to do more along the lines of like about the younger Dryas being comet impact, and Schoch is very much behind.
Solar
not that it matters.
It all happened because of Yonaguni ruins.
Oh, Yonaguni. Okay.
Yeah, during their footage of the documentary, they completely disagree and couldn't. Well, they were not enemies. They were just having different opinions and follow different directions.
The documentary was edited in a way where you can barely tell Robert disagreed. Like they only showed little piece of it where he kind of goes, yeah, I think this merits further investigation, while John Anthony West and Graham Hancock were like, it's an underwater pyramid. And then Robert shows another structure that's like actually 2 that are very close to Yonaguni, but above water, that look almost exactly the same. And they're not underwater pyramids. They're just he's certain that Yonaguni is natural, and I think I am too.
Never been, no way to tell.
I've been to structures that are not like that, but have the steps like that structure in the UP, and they are basically a natural structure that was enhanced. For instance, in this case, to facilitate the access from the water to land, so they created steps on the slate stone, but they look natural, but you can see that they were cracked and made more accessible. So it's sometimes very hard to see if they are actually natural or man-made. So it's
Brian, I see someone, Antonio, said you should write a book.
Might as well. Yeah, the Mars book, the Graham Hancock Mars book was written in 1998, which was right in that window where he was writing with Duvall and stuff like that. I do think Graham is the type to like own it if you put him on the spot, like that because his ideas have evolved over time. Fingerprints is very different than what's the new one that came out in 2015? Not Fingerprints.
Magicians.
Yeah, it even corrects some stuff from Fingerprints. So anyway,
yeah, and then he started his relation with Randall Carlson and wrote the other book.
that came after that I don't recall the name, but he's been a person with many interests, and he associated himself and learned from lots of people. But he is a person that moves on from subject to subject. He doesn't stay stuck to what he was doing before.
Either way, inspirational and beneficial to many of us independent researchers, and it was so cool, Brian, to see, you know, that indeed he did touch Mars, and I would not be surprised if we saw him coming back around to Mars before all is said and done, with all that you two have been doing and other people have been doing to highlight this topic.
Well, let's catch him up.
Yeah, I mean, I want to stress the importance of doing this live stream with you guys, because that you've taken an interest and are open-minded enough to explore this stuff when it has so much baggage. I mean, there's 50 years of we've got a 50-year credibility problem that we're still working our way out of, and you know, I'm not a researcher, but I really felt like I could help amplify what folks like John and you know, the dozens of other people I know are doing. So I think we've got a chance now that we've got, you know, and Ricardo's been, you know, hip to this stuff for a while now too. I think it's important that we collectively get together and talk about this. So, you know, again, I just want to stress how important this group is.
I will gladly put a new section on Ferris magazine if you want to put something in there, and again, the advertise to your that has been in there. Just let
Love
me
that
know and
idea.
we'll put it there.
Yeah, thank you. You know, it was great writing that one piece for you, Ricardo. The magazine's great. It's so high quality.
It is.
Jesus, you guys.
And he's going to print. He's going to print. In the next
finally, really? That's great.
So.
Yeah, just to add to what you were saying there, Brian.
Yeah.
You quoted something the other day which I really liked, and it will be remembered for eternity. Mars Disclosure is under new management.
That's right.
I like
another
it.
quote you can write down, Sarah.
I don't know if you guys watch Danny Jones podcast, but he had on this debunker, Professor Dave. Dave, did we talk about this?
No, but it came up in the chat. This guy's been going off on everyone. He did a recent one on Ben from Uncharted X as well. I just want to point out that guy's a failed high school chemistry teacher with a bachelor's degree, and he's not a professor at all. And also, I don't mind people trying to debunk stuff or disagree with stuff, but you don't have to be a total dick about it. And that's what that guy is, which to me is grifting. And I literally can't stand that guy.
Yeah, well, if you be
he's a bad person.
Evidence. Does he give proof or evidence?
He does.
He does.
He does.
Wow.
He has extensive productions, we'll just say that. But he is very much in the camp that there's a conventional explanation for everything. And that throughout his research, there's been nothing that has been able to change his mind on anything. So
and he's not a professor.
And he's not a professor.
He's not. And I actually reached out to him on Twitter. I said, I'd love you to try to debunk my channel. And then he responded like something stupid and dismissive, like I wouldn't waste my time on a channel with only 10,000 subscribers. And like, okay, when you start bringing up subscriber count, like that's when I know like you're full of shit. So anyway,
he picks people with big channels, and then he makes a thumbnail and puts a dunce cap on their head and that kind of thing. And it's just an ugly way to behave.
Yeah. So anyway, he was on Danny Jones, and he was talking about Graham Hancock and how much Graham Hancock is a fraud and this, that, and the other, like the usual. And he brought up how Graham Hancock used to talk about alien structures on Mars as a way to try to discredit Graham, which is a cheap shot, but it's an easy one. It's an easy, it's easy to say stuff like that because most of the public is already on board with that. So it makes Dan kind of seem like he knows what he's talking about. Like, what are we talking about? Structures on Mars. Like, that's okay. Yeah, you got me for sure. That sounds crazy. And it's just like, it's the shiv is in, and he's just like twisting it a little bit. So, I really one day, one of my goals is to really get a hold of Graham and being like, look, man, there's a whole lot you might not have seen, but don't try to get rid of this Mars stuff yet, because like there's some good stuff here. We got 20 years of stuff to catch you up on, and we got to shut people like Dan up, or Dave, Professor Dave up. What the hell is his name? Dave or I don't even know. But
Professor
that guy,
Dave.
Professor Dave. We got to shut this guy up because he doesn't know what he's talking about. But he complains about this, that, and the other. It's not just taking cheap shots at Mars. Really spent very little
To
time.
be honest, I think there's should be freedom of speech, so we shouldn't shut down anybody, but we should alert people to our opinions in regard what they are and what they do.
And their malicious behavior, as some of these dudes, as Dave pointed out, take on. And when you go after someone's living, you open yourself up. It's fair play at that point to you, is the way I view it. And a lot of these people do that. They have a malicious intent. And now on to the more positive thing. Listen, you hear that, Graham? Reach out to Brian. You're not going to find a more trustworthy and knowledgeable dude to guide you through what's going on Mars these days. He'll put you in touch with John, and you will waste a lot of time looking at pictures with John. Thanks, dude.
So let's get into that, actually. Brian's got a presentation about catastrophism on Mars that we're going to be talking about today. And, that I think this would be of particular interest to Mr. Hancock. So let's get into that. Chat, keep it coming. We really love all your comments. If you haven't subscribed to anybody in the panel, everyone's links are in the description, and we'd love that support. So please subscribe, like, all that stuff. Goes a long way to get the message out there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, so guys, we're splitting this up into a two-parter because there's a lot to cover, and it's really cool, and I don't want to short shrift anything. This is arguably the sexiest stuff that we've got to cover in terms
Nice.
but many people would claim sensational. All right, but there's a reason why I am so compelled to message on this stuff, because there's so much data backing all of this stuff up. So, before we begin, what we're going to cover today is essentially what is known as electric universe theory. Ricardo, I know you're hip to some of this stuff. We kind of have to explain a little bit about what that is, but what we're going to be primarily focused on is how this relates to Mars and a little bit how it relates to Earth, because I need to explain the effects that it has on these planetary bodies for you to understand, number one, just how powerful this stuff is that we're talking about. But number two, ultimately, why I personally don't think that it is the reason for the loss of the Martian atmosphere. However, we're not necessarily focused on the loss of the atmosphere today. We're talking about catastrophe, of which this is a dramatic catastrophe. So I've got some fun stuff to show you. I'm going to be opening up all kinds of cans of worms, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Are we covering Brandenburg's work in the next episode?
Next one.
Okay, next one.
That's a whole different can of worms. I can't open that many today. That's too much. But this is equally as interesting. So let me share screen here. Yes, this one here. Okay, tell me when you guys see it. I've got all you guys kind of blanked out on a different tab, so I can't see you guys. I can just see my slideshow. Tell me when you guys can see it.
It's not on screen.
No.
Dave, is it coming through? Dave or Megan?
Dave just vanished.
Dave disappeared.
We don't see
The
it
name is
yet.
still there, but the rest is gone.
Who needs to give permission?
And Megan is muted.
Megan, you're on mute.
You're
Still on mute?
Still on mute. Okay. So what are we gonna
Sorry,
do?
guys.
Rock,
there we
paper,
go.
scissors. There we go.
Brian, try again. I got it.
Okay.
Cool.
Let me try. Let me stop. Try again.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay. Here we go.
Rock, paper, scissors for who's going to take
All
over
right.
you two.
There we go.
Actually, okay. I'm going to see if I can do. Oops. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay. Sometimes when I split up my Firefox tabs on a different screen, it has weird buffering issues. But if you guys see any buffering issues, let me know, and then I'll combine it back into one Firefox.
Got it.
But so far, so good. Am I still coming through okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Sure.
Yep.
All right, cool. So, maybe what I should do is change that. Never mind.
Jason, what are those artifacts behind you?
Oh,
A lot of driftwood and a lot of metal from Mobila, the Hernando de Soto expedition. Hernando burned a lot of his own stuff, and I've got a bunch of that. And the rest of them are rocks from the surrounding area, which would have been Chief Tuscaloosa and Coosa's territory that, I found in the woods. And that's a horse skull back there. I found him nailed to the tree in the woods, and he had one of those weird Russian winter hats on. It's kind of creepy, but I needed a skull at the time, so I took that one.
I needed a skull.
Not something you hear every day. I love that.
What a wild ride.
Aesthetic elements, you know.
There
is
was
all it's
that
about.
day. There was that day that you.
Look, man, I'd found some deer skulls, and I found a little squirrel skull, and I'd found a raccoon squirrel all in the woods in this particular set of places, and I needed a
getting
bigger
better.
one to make a display, and so I needed it. There was no witchcraft, you weirdos.
Nothing wrong with witchcraft. All right, sorry, Brian. Back to you.
Oh, that's okay. Is Dave back with us?
Not yet.
No.
Okay. All right. I'll just get going, and he'll come in when he can. Okay. So I found this question of what turned this blue planet red so compelling. This is why I got into the movie, and it's why I'm doing what I'm doing today, and what anyway. So what we see here on the left, it might be hard to tell at first glance, but this is a rendering of Mars with an ocean, an atmosphere. Okay, you can see this signature scar of Valles Marineris right up here. Okay, this is what Mars used to look like, and it's just so interesting to think about. This is what Mars used to look like before Earth used to look like this.
I'm sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
Was the scar already there?
Well, I don't know if we know. We're assuming. I don't know.
I think when they added the water, they were looking at the topography of the existing landscape. So it filled in the lower areas first. And those parts that you can see are higher at elevation above that level. So I think that's why that you see the remnant of the scar.
I think what we're looking at here is if you were to take Mars today and fill it
Yes.
in with water, this is what
Correct.
it would look like. As
Yes.
to what it might have looked like 500 million years ago or a billion years ago, arguably the surface would look a little bit different because maybe it wouldn't have the scar, maybe it wouldn't have as many meteor impacts. So good question, Ricardo. But
I'm sorry. I just didn't want to confuse people because then you're going to say that was created and it was already there.
true.
Yeah,
good
not
point.
necessarily, yeah.
So if we look at Mars today, it's this barren landscape. We were talking about Barry DiGregorio last time. He says Mars is not red; it's more like a butterscotch, and he's technically correct, but we still call it the red planet because it's easy to do so. But it has this signature scar on it right here, and we're going to be focused a little bit on that scar today. But we're also going to be talking about other elements of the planet. And that scar, I mean, relative to the size of the planet, it's huge. Relative to things here on Earth, the scar itself is about the size of the United States. That's a huge geological scar. And we have very strong evidence to suggest that this was not caused by tectonic forces. This was not caused by volcanism. This was not caused by flooding or a meteor impact, but by electrical and plasma discharge. Now, you might have, okay. In the film, in my documentary, I have Robert Schock in there talking about electrical, or when we think of lightning, I'm going to use these words interchangeably: electrical discharge and plasma discharge. Lightning itself is a plasma, but it is discharging electrically between two different points. So if you hear me use one and the other, just consider it the same damn thing. But in the film, Robert Schock talks a lot about the electrical scarring of Mars. It is his belief that electrical discharge, plasma discharge, specifically a solar outburst, was what contributed to the loss of the atmosphere. And we're going to be examining that a little bit here in just a second. But what we have to do is we have to examine what are we talking about? Electrical discharge. What is electric universe theory? And I got just a few slides I'm going to show, and I'm going to read them too. Taken from redskystory.com, this is the core claim of electric universe model, that electricity, not gravity alone, drives the structure and behavior of the cosmos. And for those of you who are new to this theory, don't worry, I've got some really basics explainer points that'll help you understand. Okay, the electric universe theory is not the product of fringe science or conspiracy. It's rooted in the work of Nobel laureates and pioneering physicists whose ideas were later discarded, not because they were disproved, but because they didn't conform to dominant cosmological narratives. Now, what does this mean? We think of the 20th century as given rise to the standard cosmological model of the universe. Think Einstein and his equations and what we understand as how the universe works through relativity, okay? Through gravitational forces. This focus on gravity being the primary driver of how planets are formed, solar systems are structured, and galaxies. You guys might also recall that while we have this model, this gravitational model of the universe, unfortunately, it doesn't explain everything, and that's where we introduce concepts like dark matter and dark energy, because galaxies are not behaving the way they should when we factor in all the gravity. There is missing gravity. And so to account for that missing variable, scientists have come up with this term, dark matter. It's matter that they can't detect, but they're sure that it's there because of how the galaxy is still together and not flying apart. There's missing gravity. Okay, so they have to introduce this variable, but they really have no idea what it is. All right, so the electric universe model has an entirely different way of explaining things, about explaining how solar systems and galaxies are formed and held together. And it has nothing to do with gravity. What we know is gravity. It has more to do with electromagnetism, which is a force that is already well understood. So just a few bullet points. Standard cosmology, the standard model, has that gravity is dominant. This is the thing that we know. This is what we all grew up with, and that we all heard. Newton, Einstein. Stars are nuclear forces. Think fusion. What we're trying to do now is we're trying to create artificial fusion on Earth to try to recreate what the sun is actually doing. Okay? the universe started with a big bang. We've heard that plenty of times before. Dark matter and dark energy make up the majority of the universe. We're talking about what, 95% is made up of dark matter and dark energy, and the 5% that's left over is the stuff that we can actually see and measure. Okay, this is just basic bullet point summation here stuff. And that galaxies form by collapsing under their own gravity. This is how most mainstream scientists understand the way the universe works. Just 1 second here. In parallel with the standard model of the universe over the 20th century, this other framework, this other model was developed. So for as long as we've had the standard model, we've actually had this plasma cosmology model for just as long, and the scientists behind it were just as smart and were just as qualified. It's just that very few people have even heard of this before. So we just got done standard cosmology. Now plasma, the electric universe theory, or what is also known as plasma cosmology, it's where electricity and magnetism dominate, not gravity. And stars are not powered by fusion in their core, but they are actually powered externally. I'm giving the Cliff's Notes version of this. There are other sources that you can go to for greater detail. But I need to explain a little bit about this so you understand what the effects are that we're talking about here. The electric universe theory says that there was no Big Bang, that dark matter and dark energy don't really exist, and that galaxies are formed by electromagnetic forces. All right? I cannot go into great detail about what all of this means, but I can give you some examples through this explanation. We're going to be focused on Mars, we're going to be focusing on the Earth, and I got another little fun thing towards the end. Now, if this is the first you're hearing about this, and this sounds really strange, believe me, I get it. This was strange to me too at one point, and then I did a little digging and found that there's this group that you can, there's a great YouTube channel and website called the Thunderbolts Project, and this was started probably 2 decades ago by this man, David Talbot. Okay, here you can see him pictured at a conference, Electric Universe Conference 2014. David Talbot was a great communicator, and if you ever watch any of his videos, he has this excellent way of explaining things in layman's terms. I really wanted to interview him for my film, but unfortunately, right before I started production, he had a health incident, and he has not passed away, but he's not able to participate in an interview. Let's just put it that way. So he's kind of out for the count right now. I really wish I would have got him because he's been instrumental in helping me and millions of other people understand just what this is. He did not invent any of this. He just kind of came along in the late 20th century to try to re-explain, doing what I'm doing right now, trying to re-explain the science. All right. And so he put together what's called the Thunderbolts Project, and they have, I don't know, 1,000 videos on YouTube at this point, at which they break down exactly what the electric universe model of the universe is, how it's affected our solar system, and offers an explanation into the science behind all of this. So for those people who want to know more, there's a whole YouTube channel that I highly recommend. So now David Talbot worked with another guy called Wal Thornhill, who was an Australian scientist and who contributed heavily towards the Thunderbolts Project and gave excellent presentations. Let me just pause for a moment and say it is important that we highlight the work of these people because I believe it is important to understand that this information just didn't come out of thin air. There are very qualified people actually working on this, that this information has been coming into the mainstream largely due to their efforts. And I consider myself to be not just a fan of this stuff, but you know, I do strongly believe that this evidence is compelling enough for people to take a look at, and I really want to try to do my part in carrying the torch so that I can help educate other people on this stuff, and maybe they can pick it up. Because, a lot of these guys, if you haven't noticed, they get up there in age. Wal Thornhill died the month before I was rolling cameras on my film, and I really wanted to interview him too. These are the top 2 people, and boom, right before I start production, they're out for the count.
Who did you tell that you were going to create that?
The film?
Yes, because lots of things happen just when you were starting. These people get sick.
I didn't say anything. I didn't post. I was nobody. I didn't have any internet presence whatsoever. I just started reaching out, and I'm like, hey, I'm making a film. I want to interview you guys. I watched all your stuff because they have some stuff to say about Mars, and I told them that was what's going on. But long story short, through some weird connections online, how you can make really weird connections online, like an anonymous account who says I know some other guy who knows this other guy. I was able to meet these 2 gentlemen who are also contributors to the Thunderbolts project. Ev Cochran, these are from the film here. These are screenshots from my film. And Don Scott, who's an electrical engineer. Ev Cochran is a comparative mythologist. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it's taking a look at myths and legends and interpreting them not as made-up stories, but as testimonials, eyewitness testimonial, essentially. And so they're examining the things in the sky and the ancient carvings and saying, hey, look, this is what people actually saw and experienced thousands of years ago. So we can't just be so dismissive of this. Regardless, they both had a lot to contribute to the Thunderbolts project. And as I mentioned before, they have an extensive YouTube channel, youtube.com/@thunderboltsproject. They got some great productions. What is this? Almost 1,000 videos, 984 videos. There is so much here. Now, my main criticism of the Thunderbolts project and the Electric Universe community at large is that they do a piss poor job of explaining this to the layperson. There's so much here. And this is another thing that Professor Dave dismisses in one of his videos. He goes on and on and on about how this is a bunch of malarkey, let's just say, but it's not. And the uninitiated public doesn't know what to make of it because they've never heard of this stuff before, so they're just going to take this guy's word for it. And there really aren't too many great entry points into this world of Electric Universe. But there are exceptions. I would highly recommend, and this is one of them, their feature-length documentary on Mars, Symbols of an Alien Sky, Episode 2. They come in with a few of these. The lightning-scarred planet Mars. Robert Schock was the one who recommended to me that I watch this video of theirs as an introduction to this entire subject. And he said, look, I'll participate in your film, but this is the kind of stuff I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about pyramids. So I'm like, well, what the hell is this? What is he talking about? So I watched this 100, let's see, an hour, 20-minute long documentary. It's on YouTube. This probably came out, I don't know, 15 years ago at least. And my God, my world opened up completely. I'm like, these guys really know what they're talking about, and it is evidence-based stuff. Electromagnetism is a very well understood force of nature, and not only do they talk about it in the abstract and relate it to myths and legends, which I'm going to explain. I'm going to show you exactly what they're talking about, and this is going to click for you, okay? But they actually have laboratory experiments that demonstrate what we're seeing on Mars is the product of electrical discharge, okay? For those of you who follow Matt Bell just had a recent guest on his program, this guy Michael Claridge, who's doing some interesting work with Electric Universe and in the laboratory, trying to... What Michael Claridge is doing in the laboratory is showing that is reproducing the conditions of the sun, not through fusion, but through electromagnetism. Okay? It's complicated to explain, but he's got the goods to back all this stuff up. So we think we know what the sun is, but there's a whole host of other very smart people, much smarter than I, actually doing experiments demonstrating that the sun isn't actually what we think it is. Okay? So now, I come back to my main criticism. You know, Matt Bell asks Michael Claridge what the electric universe theory is all about, and he just spends 45 minutes confusing the hell out of everybody. So I love these guys. They just can't break it down into simple terms. A lot of these guys are too smart for their own good. They don't know how to use regular language to communicate with regular old folks. But that's what we're going to try to do here today. You guys can let me know if I've succeeded at that. But this is a thing. If you haven't heard of it, that's okay. Not many people have, but it's a thing. And my God, it's exciting. For those of you who have been to the Cosmic Summit, again, getting back to Robert Schoch, talking about the Younger Dryas, we've got the comet impact theory over here that caused the Ice Age, this Younger Dryas event. But then Robert Schoch gets up on stage and is the singular voice talking about, no, it wasn't comets, it wasn't meteor impacts, it was the solar outburst thing, you guys, because we have vitrification everywhere. And I don't know if people really understand what the hell it is he's talking about. I think he's got some really great slides and some compelling stuff. But what Robert Schoch, he's definitely, I am with him. I think that this stuff really needs to get a fair shake. It hasn't gotten a fair shake, but I think there's a lot of people that need to take this stuff seriously because arguably it has some really compelling data. Now, what Robert Schoch needs to show is this fucking image. Okay? This is what he's talking about. All right? Where the sun had a day where it just, you know.
Yeah,
It had a moment. It got a little angry.
Exactly.
I'm having a day, yo.
the
We
question
had a day.
Yeah, the
Now
question is
we hear about the sun and having some outbursts and taking out satellites. What are these things called? Coronal mass ejections or solar flares, things like that?
surface mass ejections is completely different. You need a surface mass ejection to cause vitrification 8 minutes light away from the sun.
Okay. All I'm saying is that we hear from time to time about the sun having these weird outbursts, and there's a variety of different ones. But we do know that the sun interacts with Earth. For those of you who are familiar with the Aurora Borealis, the northern lights, these fancy lights that appear up in the Arctic Circle and things of that nature, what is this? This is an interaction between the sun's solar wind and our magnetic field. It produces these lights. Okay? The particles come from the sun, it hits the magnetic field, and then it spreads out. Okay? In the shape of whatever the magnetic field is. And if you're in the International Space Station, you see this from above, it goes all over the planet. It's incredible stuff. So think of that, but on steroids is what we're talking about here. This kind of stuff, if you have enough of it, produces dramatic and catastrophic geological upheaval. Okay? Perhaps even more than what a comet impact would do. So it's not to be taken lightly. This is serious stuff. Now, and we're going to be getting in, I'm going to show you exactly what we're talking about here, these scars. What effect does it have geologically on a planetary body? There's one other thing to consider here. Robert Schoch is a very big proponent of a solar discharge being the main component of, the Younger Dryas event. and these electrical scarring that we see on Mars and on Earth. However, there's another idea, which is very simply two planets discharging between the two of them. Okay? If anybody remembers Van de Graaff generator experiments from high school science class, okay, you get one big ball with one charge, you get another ball with another charge, and if they're if they're far enough away from each other, they don't really see each other. But if you get them close enough together, what happens? They discharge between the two of them. Okay? And Don Scott, just going back here real quick, Don Scott, this guy over here, when I interviewed him, as he says in the film, he says, my research suggests that planets themselves have charge. Okay? I don't think that should be so much of a shock. I mean, think about when what else is electrical discharge? Electrical discharge is when you zap yourself on the door handle when you go to open up the door in the middle of the winter. Okay? That's discharging between you and the door handle because there's enough of a different charge. Discharge lightning. We all know lightning. It is a discharge between the sky and the ground when there's enough of a differential where things just need to equalize, and thus produces lightning. So why should we not believe that planets themselves have enough voltage differential between the two of them? So if they come within close enough contact with each other, because we know it's not just the rock that is the planet. It has an atmosphere. It has a magnetosphere. And these things can interact if magnetospheres, which are much bigger than the planet itself, actually come close enough in contact. There is this electrical connection that can happen. Okay, Robert Schoch doesn't think planetary discharge has anything to do with what we're about to see, but I need to throw that out there because there are these two different main ideas about how discharge actually works in our solar system. Okay, so now let's get into the very specific examples of what this looks like. Everybody knows what an impact crater looks like, no matter if it's on Earth or on Mars. What do we see? We see a circular crater. Something hit here. And look, all the stuff just came spilling out the side, right? That's it. Case closed. Now, what happens, though, when you come across a crater that's not circular, but is hexagonal? Has anyone ever seen a hexagonal crater before?
Yep.
Anybody else?
I have.
I don't think so.
Other than here with you guys, no.
Right.
Okay.
Same.
No.
These hexagonal craters are all over Mars. Lightning, electrical discharge, produces hexagonal craters. Impacts from meteors do not produce hexagonal craters. I had never seen this before. This blew my mind. All right. In the film, you see Robert Schoch and Don Scott talk about these sorts of things because they are, Robert Schoch, as you know, is a geologist, and Don Scott is an electrical engineer. They understand what happens when electricity does crazy things to geology. All right. Now, you guys might be familiar with this giant hole out west known as Barringer Meteor Crater. And I don't know about you, but to me, that doesn't look quite so circular. They call it Meteor Crater. But in the visitor center, in the pamphlets, anywhere you go, it stresses that no meteor was ever found. No meteor fragment, nothing was ever found. I don't see any surrounding ejecta. Okay, that's the other thing. That's another characteristic. There's no surrounding ejecta. The stuff doesn't blow out right next to it. Okay, what happens is it gets sucked straight up into the atmosphere. All right. And it spreads out all over the place, much further out. Some of it comes right back down because it was ejected straight up, but it comes right back down. So sometimes you'll see craters with little mounds right in the middle of them. Okay. So this is up for debate. I don't think there's any, the case isn't closed in my opinion, but it is worth it is worth considering because like, look, what do we see here? We see straight sides on at least 3 of the different sides. We see some roundness here. Yeah. But I don't see a surrounding ejecta field, and we see straight sides. One could argue it's kind of hexagonal. And, you know, Mother Nature isn't going to do things precisely. But anyway, just want to bring that up. Okay.
So I just want to add to that.
Yeah.
Although these people are brilliant researchers, including Robert Schoch and all the people you spoke about, electric universe, and although there is also brilliant researchers on the part of the impact hypothesis, I think everybody's being very strongly gatekeeping on their own ideas instead of collaborating, because the sun doesn't create a surface mass ejection for no reason. It's because otherwise we've seen it before in the 200 years that we've been studying it hard, right? It doesn't happen. It needs a catalyst to do it. It needs something to provoke it, and that is a very big comet coming by.
Yep.
Right? And we've seen previous interactions of the sun with comets or other objects that go too close to it or are too big in this proximity. So, and the image that you show with the flame hitting the planet is awesome, because I think what happened is exactly that, but as a glance. You know that the planet is always inclined. It has a deviation. It's not perfectly vertical. So it glanced the north of the country, and that's what it created, that vitrification and the initial melting, and then come the impacts, because we have several evidence that the Taurids are the remains of that comet, and it impacted every around 3,000 years after the Younger Dryas. It kept impacting until 56 AD, being the last piece falling into England. I would even convey that the Burkle crater and the 2 impacts in the Pacific and the 1 impact in the Atlantic around 3200 BC or 4000 BC, according to others and myself, is all coming from the same object, from the same direction, because they keep circling until there's nothing more. There's a reason why the Taurids now, you barely can see 10 shooting stars in an hour, where 100 years ago you could see 1,000. We've been clearing the path. So another point is, you showed an image with the 2 planets with the sky, exactly. So we know for a fact that used to be a planet between Mars and Jupiter, and that planet was called by the Greeks as Phaeton. So if that planet suffer a catastrophe, or if that planet come too close, or it has well, we know that they say that there is a high metallic content in the asteroid belt, in many of the asteroids. So this planet was highly metallic, so highly proponent to electric charges. So what caused it to explode? Was this that we are seeing in the image, and Mars survived and Phaeton didn't, right? So it's returning to listen to Velikovsky, listen to all these people that have been discredited because some of their ideas really are hard to believe, but there is some truth or some knowledge that we can obtain from them. And I think it's our job, it's our mission to put all the information together in search from a more probable reality, instead of just focusing, as these people are, just on their work and trying to prove that their work is the only solution to the matter, when I think it isn't, clearly. Sorry for the rant, but
Ricardo, in general, I agree with you, because I think you said something before. The electric universe crowd does tend to get carried away and want to explain everything. You know, which they have substantial evidence to show that there's a lot that can be explained with electric universe theory. But, you know, and for the folks here today, I'm giving the surface level, the 101 introduction to this stuff. This goes so deep it'll make your head explode. But for what I'm showing today, I think there is ample evidence that clearly demonstrates the theory at work. It's not just theory. It is you can see it for yourself.
Brian,
yes.
the Grand Canyon
I'm getting there.
is also
I'm working on it.
I'm getting there. Time out. Don't spoil it.
Hey, Brian, are you going to show us the plasma discharge in the lab bit? Because that for me was so convincing when I talked
We're
to you
getting
about
there.
this.
We're getting there.
Okay, cool.
So
That's why I was asking.
So you don't want me to show the image of the Grand Canyon from space I just pulled up? You already got
No.
one.
Not
good.
yet. Not
Hey,
yet.
but while I'm talking, let me just echo what Ricardo said. I do really like the fact that much of this, and I heard this out of Graham in his last interview, when you're looking at the Younger Dryas and you start looking at some of these theories, you realize that a lot of them could go hand in hand. And for instance, the sun exploding in such a way, well, if it had a comet that was yanking on its gravity like crazy and it a bunch of chunks flew into it, that pissed the sun off, as we say. So I just wanted to echo that. I totally agree. I think these guys probably should put their power together and see what shakes
You
loose.
can't frozen mammoths with food still in their stomachs with heat from the sun. Okay, so it has to be more than one explanation and more than one phase to this event, right?
Yeah, look at Tunguska as well.
Yeah, an airburst almost a mile high, right? And I realized I've been talking with people here and they didn't know about Tunguska. So it's still an obscure subject, incredibly. I don't understand how, but it is. There's many people that never heard of it.
Jason, because you spend so much time outside by the river, by these nice streams, I'm hoping you might be able to help me out with this next slide here. What does this look like to you?
What, the green one? Green one looks like a delta.
Okay.
The electrical delta.
It's not meant to be a trick question here.
Yeah, it
Looks like
looks.
the Grand Canyon.
I mean, it looks. Yeah, if I were to, head on down the Alabama River to Mobile, that's about what I'd encounter before I got to open water in the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is basically a river channel system, right?
It looks like a lightning bolt with branches.
Okay,
Branching
well,
off.
that's what we need to focus on here.
Yeah.
Jason, is the correct way of describing this a river channel system? How would you? What would you say?
I mean, I honestly, because you've got so many different water sources coming together there, I would only go with Delta because I've got so many different rivers coming together, at least from my perspective.
Okay.
And they're going in open plains. But I mean, you could call it multiple river channels, yes, without a doubt.
All I'm trying to demonstrate here is that small little streams come together to form bigger streams that ultimately come together.
Yeah,
to
if
form
you're
rivers.
coming north to south, that is exactly what it looks like. It looks like you've got the headwaters slowly moving into the waters. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
with you.
And from above, they call this pattern a dendritic pattern. Dendritic meaning branch-like trees. You might say, oh, this kind of looks like trees. You got a big trunk, you got branches, you got smaller twigs, right? They kind of have that. That's the word they use to describe this. And you can see just a very basic thing here. This almost looks like a tree branch. Dendritic, but this is what river channels and streams look like, okay? But
It's the code of creation. It's similar in so many things.
okay, I show this because this looks very similar to, but not exactly the same as, a Lichtenberg pattern. Okay, now what does this look like to everybody?
You and I have talked about taking
It's not meant to be a trick question. Just what does it look like?
If one of those go into your nostrils, you're going to sneeze.
The Grand Canyon from space.
It looks like lightning.
Yeah, if you put a bunch of water on wood and then take a hot wire and stank it to the wood, you'll get a pattern just like that.
We're getting there, Jason. We're getting there. I'm just saying simply.
Was that after the skulls or before, Jason?
It was daring if we need to get technical.
Lightning also produces a similar pattern, okay, where you have a main trunk, but then it sort of branches out into smaller and smaller things. All right. When lightning strikes, it actually, when lightning strikes anything, it can produce a number of different effects. We just saw the hexagonal craters. It can do that, but it can also do a lot of other things. And more intuitively, when lightning strikes, it produces a pattern that looks a Lichtenberg pattern, which just looks like lightning. We see it on golf courses, the greens. We see it on people. And Jason, what you were just mentioning a second ago, there is artwork that is produced by essentially taking what, 2 electrodes, Jason? How does it work?
Yeah. Well, I was in a camper that had a malfunctioning microwave, and when we broke open the microwave and then just took the hot and you lay it down on the water, and we would use water to kind of, you can guide it, right? So if you have dry wood, you can put the water down, get your paintbrush, and kind of push this pattern where you want it to. It's pretty cool.
Well, Jason, let's just say, for example, if I got a car battery, and instead of hooking the wires up to another car battery to try to charge it, I took those leads and stuck them both in a piece of wood.
Right.
It would be discharging that electricity into the wood, and what that does is it produces this Lichtenberg pattern, because essentially you're electrifying the wood. It just naturally produces this effect. Okay, and that's other
wild on the human, dude. That's just wild. I've never seen that.
There's other artwork that is produced with acrylic, where they take an electrode and they get a nail and they get a hammer and they go tap, and it just electrocutes this piece of acrylic, and it creates this wonderful, beautiful Lichtenberg pattern. And they sell these things. You can put them on your coffee table. But lightning produces Lichtenberg patterns, which is another way of saying a lightning pattern on surfaces of the ground, on people, and on anything you want. Okay?
Looks like a feather. It's crazy how it looks like so many things.
What we have to remember, though, and this is what Robert Schoch talks about, you might not, if you go back and watch his presentation, you probably don't remember this, but he'll say this often, and I think it just goes over people's heads, is that this effect is scalable, okay? Electrical discharge can happen on the microscopic scale. It can happen on this scale here that we're familiar with, the tea, the person, the table, the coffee table, but it can also happen much bigger. So when we take a look, what does this look like? What am I showing here?
A mountain range?
Exactly.
Rivers.
Topographic map with some snow, possibly, and some greenery, potentially, in the valley down there.
Right.
Seen from space, it's so far away, probably.
It's a mountain range. This is the Himalayan mountain range. But you can clearly see the Lichtenberg pattern.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay? Lots of mountain ranges look exactly like this. We tend to think of mountain ranges being created by tectonic forces, continental plates being pushed together and slowly uplifting the land. And I'm not here to try to argue against that entirely. But what we see all over the world are these Lichtenberg patterns that are essentially mountains, mountain ranges. All right? And we see them in very specific spots that also demonstrate other characteristics of having undergone extreme electromagnetic discharge. Now, Jean, you just brought this up. Okay, what does this look like? Anybody know what this is?
The
Grand Canyon from space. I'm
you
looking
go.
at it right now.
We got it.
Okay. I would argue that many people have not seen the Grand Canyon from this perspective. We all know what it looks like when you go up to it. What do we see? We see just this excavated ground. It's just like you're looking down to a canyon. All right? But from space, it takes on a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
And mainstream science does not yet offer a comprehensive explanation as to its formation. The basic gist of it is, in order for this thing to have been carved by water, it would have required the water to have flown uphill. Okay? So while water has gone down into it, to say that it was entirely created by water, well, doesn't hold water.
Mm.
And just look at that. Does that look like a typical, this looks like what water does. It looks similar to, but it is not exactly the same as these Lichtenberg figures. Now, this is just to get you familiar. Well, okay. If this is in fact a Lichtenberg pattern, it is a Lichtenberg. It matches the characteristics of a Lichtenberg pattern. If this was the product of electrical discharge, can you imagine the size of the lightning bolt that would have been required to produce something like this? Or this?
Colossal.
Okay. So when Robert Schoch says electrical discharge is scalable, this is what he's talking about. Now, on Mars, what do we see? We see lots of these. Okay, remember this wood thing up in the upper right, okay? On Mars, we see a lot of these what they call tributaries, which indicates river flow. Okay? These things, they're not really tributaries. They are channels carved out by electricity, electrical discharge, and you can already see when compared to the electrical discharge in the wood, how it takes on a very similar shape. Yeah. All right. So when we get explanations from NASA and geologists about these strange features that we see on Mars, what they will say is these things were carved by water, or the other explanation, the other geological explanation that they have for these things right here are that they call them collapsed lava tubes. Now, you guys know what these things are. We have them here on Earth. Lava comes out of the volcano, and it makes these tunnels, right? And then all the lava leaves, leaving these, this was once filled with lava, right? But then once the lava stops flowing, we're left with these cool caves, these cool tunnels that we can go in and start exploring. And then sometimes some of them might collapse, right? There's the person looking up at the sky through what has been a partially collapsed lava tube. Here's all the rubble that came down from this thing. So what they're saying is that these are collapsed lava tubes. Now that's a whole lot of collapse. I couldn't find any images on Earth that showed miles-long collapsed lava tubes. If you guys can, please let me know. I couldn't find any. All I can find is stuff like this. Like it's collapsed here and there, but not entirely. And you guys can imagine what is required for a collapsed, what is required for a lava tube to form? A volcano. Okay, you can't have a lava tube without some volcanic source. So when we look on Mars, we see lots of these strange patterns. You might say, well, some of these might look like a crater, and that's fair. But what do we see? We see these crater, what is called crater chains. Look, it's just sort of like zipping along in a straight line, zipping along here, kind of goes curved.
It looks like an apprentice's welding job.
Right. Like a sloppy electrical type of thing.
Yeah.
None of them have ejecta either. There's nothing around. I mean, it all looks like, I had carved something in wood. I mean, there's, what I mean? And blew it clean.
Right. And
what perspective am I looking at this from? Like
this is like a 3/4 perspective, not quite top down. And this was taken from this was taken from the Thunderbolts Project video on Mars. Okay, I'm going to show a top down in a second here that'll show a better perspective to help you get an idea. But I'm showing you this because there's no rhyme or reason to this. This doesn't look like there's one central point of origin, like there's a volcano and things are emanating out from a central point. This doesn't, I could be wrong, but this doesn't look like what riverbed erosion looks like, what a previous river channel, like a previous like a dried out riverbed. That doesn't look like that. And you have these little tiny crater chains. What natural process explains these sorts of things? And the best that NASA and academia have to come up with are collapsed lava tubes. But I argue you can't have a collapsed lava tube without a volcano somewhere. River channels do not make 90-degree turns like this. We just saw what they look like. They have this dendritic pattern. So we have this is all over the surface of Mars. Something carved it out. And yes, you have typical meteor impact craters here, here, and here, but I don't see any volcano that would have made any of this stuff from a lava
But still,
tube.
it's too straight to be electric discharge, right?
Right.
No, not necessarily, because electric discharge can go straight for a little while.
Yeah, and then turn 90 degrees too tired.
And then you back.
Okay, that's Ricardo. It's a good question. Electrical discharge produces, let's say, a dozen different characteristic signature scarring. All right. Some of them look dramatically different from the others, and that is the funky thing about it, is that electricity does really wacky things determined on like how much of it there is, exactly where it's coming from, et cetera, et cetera.
It could have arced between the two longer arcs. It could have arced across. Because
Yes.
if you've got two charged metal or copper rods and you send an electrical charge, that plasma goes up like a between the two.
Right.
So that could be an arc between the two longer ones.
Has anyone here ever microwaved a compact disc?
Wow. No.
I've microwaved a lot of shit, but I've never microwaved a CD. I think I might do that later.
Okay, well, if you got one that you don't mind sacrificing, if you put it, label side down, let's say, and you take a look at it, you nuke it for about, 3 seconds, you're going to see a lot of lightning bolts all over the place, and then you pop it open and you take a look at it, and there's going to be all this Lichtenberg figures like all over the place. It's kind of chaotic, but it produces some really interesting shape. I used to do this in college.
Will it take care of disc rot? Because I've got a couple of discs that won't play.
So what I'm attempting to do, you have very good questions, and I'm not the expert to try to explain all of this stuff. The Thunderbolts channel really does a much better job of going the deep dive into all of this kind of stuff. And not only that, it actually shows you laboratory experiments that reproduce exactly what you're seeing. To say, look, when you zap something in the lab using plasma discharge, these are the variety of signature scarring that can happen because of it. So we looked at Valles Marineris a little while ago, so let's come back to that. This giant scar, that's a really funky scar. It doesn't look like a dendritic river channel system. It doesn't look like what a volcano might do. All right. It's got this really long canyon type thing here in the center, this funky thing here, and this funky thing here, and just some weird stuff here on the end. But guess what, folks? Billy Elverton and Michael Steinbacher reproduced this thing in the lab with electrical discharge. Now, what we're seeing here on the right is a metal plate with basically some sand sprinkled on it. And they zapped it with electrodes, and the sand took an interesting shape. It took this really funky shape. Okay? We can obviously see the similarities here where it's kind of going up on the right side, coming up on the right side. It's going down on the left side. It's going down on the left side. It's got this big bulbous section here. It's got a big bulbous section here. It is not precisely 100% pixel for pixel map, but you get the idea. It's a funky shape, and it is reproducible in the laboratory. And I have to give credit. This was brought to my attention by a man named Andrew Hall, who is yet another contributor to the Thunderbolts project. He's got a whole website dedicated to this kind of stuff. And he's got a blog post specifically about Mars, and he talks a lot about this, and there's video and everything like that. Okay? And you have to ask yourself, well, if this is in fact an electrical discharge scar, what the hell made it? How big of an event are we talking about here? And before we answer that question, I need to... What's really cool about the scar is that it's actually much bigger. What we're seeing here is only the central component of it.
It wraps all the way around the planet, man. I mean, when you see it from this perspective, you just don't realize. It's like literally going around the globe. It's crazy big.
You're not too far off here, Jason, because if you take a look at a topographical map of the planet that is organized by color, you'll see the scar, but you'll also see some other stuff, how it extends. It's actually a giant figure 8.
Yeah, infinity sign. Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yep.
It starts, and here is one half, and here's the upper half.
Yep.
Now, the blue and the green, those are lower elevations. The red are higher elevations. So what do we see? We see something that has been carved out here, that is arcing up here and coming back here, zipping, directly connecting to this portion of it here. And then from the lower half, we're seeing something that has been raised up. Positive, negative. This is how electricity works. All right? So this thing is actually much bigger. And when you take that into account, it's silly to try to think that any normal tectonic force or river or flood or volcano made something like that. That's just so odd. And oh, by the way, if you look very carefully at the sun, you see you see the same thing. You see these figure 8 patterns directly on the sun. It's an electromagnetic effect. Okay? You see these same figure 8 patterns elsewhere. And again, I have to credit Andrew Hall and his blog. He cites this as a figure 8 magnetic field of an electric dipole. Now, for us electrical dummies, just think dipole meaning positive, negative. Okay. Now this
Holy
funky,
shit.
this funky shape. Yeah, exactly. This thing's huge. This funky shape. Somebody, and I don't know who. Somebody saw this and noticed that Earth. What's that?
Little stick men figures.
Oh, we're getting there.
So cool, man.
Somebody saw this, and I don't know who it was who originally discovered this, but somebody saw this and said, you know what? Earth has got a scar just like this one.
Yep.
And it's the entire west coast of North America. We have this central section where it kind of dips down like this. It goes over, it arcs up. It goes over, it arcs up. Goes over here, it starts arcing down. Look at this. This kind of looks like Alaska.
It's got a tail. It's got a tail and everything.
Okay, and this section up here, we have, if you look here, one of these is elevated and one of these is depressed, and that kind of it syncs up a little bit with these areas up here. and obviously you can see some similarities here. It is not precisely the same, but you can see that it has the same general shape. Not only that, but here's what I discovered. Maybe somebody else saw this too, but no one pointed this out to me. I was just taking a look at Earth. First of all, my friend Dan Sutton showed this to me at the Cosmic Summit. This is how Dan and I connected. He had this up on his laptop at the Cosmic Summit. I'm like, what the hell is this? And who the hell are you? So Dan showed this to me, and I'm going to talk about Dan in just a second. But after looking at this, I took a look at the Earth, and I'm like, this part down here that goes down and comes back around, look, we've got the same thing here. This is Hawaii. This mountain chain, this underwater mountain range here. Okay, we've got a giant scar, and look at it. I mean, it's, if I had these more aligned, you could see, but relatively speaking, they're in the same damn spot. Now, we have erosional forces here on this planet, so I don't know why we don't see a connection back up in here, but electricity does strange things. I don't know when this might have occurred, yada, 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 but we have a similar feature here on Earth, and it's a very funky shape. Now, if, the question that comes back to, if this was in fact an electrical discharge scar, what caused this? What giant event must have caused this? All right, that whatever it was must have been huge. Whether it was another planet, I don't know, or whether it was the sun, I don't know. But we have to keep in. Well, the question I had was, why do we see an excavation here, but we don't see an excavation here on the West Coast? Well, that makes sense because you think the Earth's gravity is much greater than that of Mars. Mars would not have had the, if we're just using standard model here, okay, what we understand is gravity. Whatever electrical force happened to Mars was so strong that it was able to pull it out of the crust of the planet. But on Earth, since the gravity was stronger, it was only able to pull it up. And so this entire West Coast, what do we have out here? Mountains. It's all uplift. It wasn't an excavation, but it did pull it up. All right. Let's keep going. So, Valles Marineris, if we were to take a different look at this, just look at that. Does that look like typical water erosion or tectonic forces or volcanism? Another signature characteristic of electrical discharge is canyon walls are scalloped. I don't know, if anybody who plays guitar, sometimes you have scalloped frets where the fretboard isn't flat, but it's kind of indented a little bit. They call them scalloped frets. It just has this little loop, 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 loop kind of thing. But then the next question becomes, when you take a look at that, if all that was filled in at some point, where did all that material go? If this happened in an instant, think about how quick lightning is. This all happened. This just in moments, okay? I characterize this as instantaneous excavation of a canyon the size of the United States. Where the hell did all that material go?
Up into the atmosphere and dispersed on the surface.
Or volatilized.
Became glass.
It probably went everywhere. It probably went up into outer space. Some of this might have been, the two moons that we have on Mars might be remnants of a meteor impact or electrical discharge or something like that. But if you guys remember, what do most of the rover photographs look like? You guys recall what most rover photographs look like?
Boulders, rocks.
There's a lot of pieces everywhere.
Pebbles.
Exactly.
Brown stairs.
Is it any surprise that we see a landscape that looks like this basically everywhere on the planet, and we see meteor impacts or impact craters rather. Like this, it could, all these craters, there are thousands, if not millions of craters all over Mars, could have been created by all this debris just raining back down on the planet after this instantaneous
Yes.
explosion.
Exactly.
You know? Sure, maybe we have some meteors or comets from outer space that come and collide, but we've got so many impacts.
Yeah, but I would say if you have the interaction, this caused by interaction of two planets, this discharge could have lasted for hours, weeks in our time. So until one of them exploded eventually, which is the case here with Fatum. So
Sure.
It's likely, yeah.
Right, and maybe this has something to do with the what was once a planet between Mars and Jupiter, like it just got caught up or something, and the electrical, just got caught up electrically speaking, and ripped itself apart or blasted itself apart or who knows what. Few more examples here. You guys know the reshot structure here on Earth. Well, guess what? There's one on Mars.
I did not. How did I not know that?
Unbelievable.
I don't think the reshot, for what it's worth, not that anyone's asking, but I don't think the reshot structure has anything to do with Atlantis.
Jimmy, I hope you're not watching.
Look, Jimmy does some good work. I don't know Jimmy, but he has an interesting case to be made. But I think the thing is, anyway.
How big is that one on Mars? Do you know?
Nowhere near as big. I think it's only about 2 miles. Okay, but remember, electrical discharge is scalable, right?
Right.
Andrew Hall on his blog outlines. I'm actually doing a whole video on this. It'll come out in a couple of weeks, going into further detail about this. There are other reshot structures on Earth. Okay, not many people know this, and I'm going to be showing some of those. But there's this thing on Mars looks exactly like it. Andrew Hall has on his blog a lot more detail as to how it formed. I'll just quote one sentence here. The reshot was created by a plasma tornado spinning like a buzzsaw between two opposing jet streams. Conventional geology explains this as essentially a collapsed volcano. They say a volcano came up, but then collapsed back down over eons of time, forming these perfectly concentric circles. I don't buy it, but there's a lot to electrical discharge. Anyway, just an interesting example. Okay, now into, you guys know petroglyphs. I think we talked about petroglyphs before. We did talk about on our microbial life episode a little while ago was this thing called rock varnish. We talked about how out in the desert, it's also sometimes known as desert varnish, you have this black coating that forms on rocks that is formed by microbes essentially ingesting manganese, and it produces this black coating on the rock. Now, thousands of years ago, our ancestors saw this black coating on the rocks, and they started scraping it off and carving petroglyphs into it. This particular petroglyph is known as the squatter man. Okay, just kind of, or stick man. You might say it looks like a stick man, right? It's got an arm, it's got legs. Okay. Well, guess what? We see these things all over the world.
Yep.
There are dozens of these things. Has everyone seen Squatter Man before?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Robert Schoch talks about it like in his book. It's right behind me,
Yeah.
but like he shows all this stuff, and it's wild. I think they're in more than just these places too.
That's correct. This is just a handful of dozens of examples. And yes, Robert does bring this up in his presentation in his book, and I'm going to be covering some of that here right now. But what do we think of? How do we interpret these things? What do we think these things are? Why would people all over the world?
They look like scientific symbols of something.
The general idea is that what we think that people saw something in the sky and they carved it on a rock. But what would that something have to be if they saw it all over the world?
Huge.
Huge.
Yep, out in space.
Here's an artist's rendition of this. Okay.
Yeah.
People a long time ago saw something in the sky that looked like this, and then they carved it on a stone.
Yep.
Okay.
It's a plasma discharge.
It looks like plasma, yeah.
So, but that's a really funky shape. Now, 25 years ago, a plasma physicist known as Anthony Peratt, this is what Robert Schoch talks about, connected some dots, okay? And he published a paper, Characteristics for the Occurrence of a High Current Z-pinch Aurora as Recorded in Antiquity. And what does that mean? It means here's a bunch of petroglyphs that I'm going to show you in this research paper, and I'm going to show you how they match these high current plasma discharge experiments that I've been doing in my lab, classified for years. The story goes that Anthony Peratt went to one of these Thunderbolts conferences, these Electric Universe Thunderbolts conferences, and they were talking about these petroglyphs. And he said, how the hell did you guys get these things? These things look exactly like my plasma discharge things that I'm doing in the lab. That's classified work. In the laboratory, he produces things that look like this through high energy plasma discharge. Forgive the quality here. This is taken directly from his paper. Okay. Essentially, we have the central component with a ring. Here's a perhaps a different view of it. We have a donut in the center. Okay, this is a three-dimensional thing, and then let's say a bowl on top and a bowl on bottom, upside down, and a central, what we're going to call a Q-tip figure. Okay, but if you cut that right down the middle so we can get a cross-section view, if we're looking through if you know what we can see is that it's translucent essentially. So where it is wrapping back around on itself, you can kind of see the outline of these things. So this is a two-dimensional representation, as if you just cut it right down the middle. You guys get that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, my question would be, what events do they propose to create this kind of appearance in the sky?
I'm glad you asked, Ricardo. We're getting right to that.
Thank you.
Okay, so back in the day, 25 years ago, what was this paper published? 2003 is when he published this paper. He took a look. He's the guy who figured this stuff out. These petroglyphs are what people saw in the sky, these high energy plasma discharges. And oh, by the way, there's a dozen of these things. Okay, there's a dozen different petroglyphs that match plasma discharge experiments. It's not just the Squatterman. The Squatterman is just the easiest one to identify because it looks like us, right? It's easy. All right. Now, some of you might know that I met a guy who picked up right where Anthony Peratt left off. Anthony Peratt is still with us, from what I understand, but he's getting up there in age. He doesn't look like this, and he's a lot older now. I think he's in a home, unfortunately, and I think he's kind of out for the count. And that's why we have to talk about this, because a lot of these guys are getting up there, if they're still with us, and they're out of the game. So we really have to explain what they've done and get new people involved with this kind of stuff, because it's incredible stuff. So you might remember just a moment ago, I met this guy, Dan Sutton, at the Cosmic Summit last year. He had open on his laptop the Mars scar, the Valles Marineris, and how it matched the West Coast. And I go up to him, I'm like, what the hell is this? And I started talking to him, and he started telling me, well, I didn't find this, and this is what this is, but I'm a big fan of the electric universe, and I think I've discovered something that no one else has seen. And I'm like, oh, really? Well, tell me more. And then that began the series of conversations that I had with him over basically 6 months, where Dan essentially found where the Squatter Man collided with Earth. So this thing that was in the sky wasn't just still, it was moving. And eventually, it actually hit Earth. And I'm speaking with confidence about this because we've got the goods to back this claim up. Okay? Dan has made an incredible discovery. Now listen, I'm explaining all this to you. This all relates to Mars, trust me, but we got to get through this. Okay? If you rotate the Earth and look at it this way, we have India up here, we have Russia here, and we have China here. This is where the plasmoid, this is where the Squatter Man, that thing in the sky, this is where it collided with Earth. And the scar is this big. Okay? This is the scar right here. And if you don't see it yet, that's okay, because I'm going to do an overlay. But essentially, at its widest point, it's about 4,000 miles. This thing was huge. Dan noticed that the curve of the Himalayan mountain range that goes right here, and this line that goes right through it right here, kind of seems very similar to what is known as a double-stacked toroid. Okay, you have, think positive and negative, where it's rotating. These things rotate really quick, and in the middle here we have something called a block wall, a domain block wall. This is all related to electromagnetism. But to clarify this, okay, if you take, he noticed that this scar, this plasma scar on Earth matches the magnetic field of a bar magnet. If you take a bar magnet, you know, like you get from science class, positive and negative, right? And if you put it down on something called, I want you to disregard this outer orange ring for just a moment. Just look at this. This looks like a battery, but it's actually a bar magnet. And if you put it on top of something called a ferro lens, which is essentially this, or rather ferro fluid, it's complicated. But it gives you a visualization of the magnetic field of the bar magnet. Now this magnetic field of the bar magnet, this is a 2D representation of a 3D, you know, magnetic fields are 3D, okay? But you see how it's 3D, okay? But what we're seeing is we're seeing a top toroid, we are seeing a bottom toroid, and we are seeing a central domain block wall, okay?
It's like a slice through the structure.
Thank you. Dan and I, this image here came from a research paper, all right? And believe it or not, you can reproduce this in the home, which is exactly what Dan and I did. Dan came out here for about 4 days, and we did all this. We got a bar magnet. And what you're seeing here is a simple metal bar magnet that you can buy online or wherever, and it is resting on top of 2 glass plates. In between these plates is a special fluid called ferro fluid, like iron, think iron, ferro fluid. And when you shine a light from underneath both of the glass plates with the ferro fluid in the middle, you get this funky shape. What you see is a slice, exactly, thank you, John, of the double stacked toroid with this central block domain wall. This block domain wall is essentially the midpoint between positive and negative of the battery, all right? Now, this is a single light source. You can also reproduce this with any amount of light sources you want. You can kind of see here what you see here. This is the feet of my tripod. Okay, here in my living room. We went out. We bought 2 picture frames to get the glass. That's what this is. Okay, and then we put down this ring light. We put down this bar magnet. It's just resting on 2 plates of glass, and in between the glass is this interesting substance, ferrofluid. And each one of these lines corresponds to the light, and it is showing you a visual representation of the magnetic field of this bar magnet. And this, if we go back to this for a second, this scar here on Earth matches precisely. This is an artist's rendition of what a magnetic field of a bar magnet looks like. Matches precisely. You can see the line running through, and this thing was spinning. So down here we have a depression. This is a valley, and up here we have uplift. Okay, all this is mountain range. All of this has been uplifted. Now we have this central component here. Now what the heck is this? Because that wasn't necessarily part of that. And what that is that is showing you the interior portion. Well, to explain what this is, we have to understand something else. We have to understand this other celestial object called a Herbig-Haro object. Okay? This is a photograph taken by NASA. The Herbig-Haro object is right here in the center, and it has these 2 astrophysical jets shooting out the top and bottom of it, both out of both poles. And here's just a simple illustration of this, where the Herbig-Haro object, which is classified as it is technically called it is a plasmoid. We'll talk about what you guys might have heard this word plasmoid. We'll talk about more of that in a second. But essentially plasmoids out in outer space, as evidenced by Herbig-Haro, the 2 guys who discovered this. Okay, it has a polar jet out of both ends. It has what's called an accretion disk, and the central component of what the damn thing actually is. You guys may remember from science class, you get a bar magnet, sprinkle iron filings around it, and it creates this interesting shape. That was the only way that we could visualize the magnetic field of a bar magnet up until we started getting stuff like this, ferrofluid, and different ways of doing it. Okay, that was only up past 10, 15 years we've been able to do that. Up until then, all we had was iron filings. Now, a plasmoid is an organized structure of plasma within a magnetic field. So think plasma trapped in a magnetic field. Okay? That's what this is. It is plasma trapped in a magnetic field. Here's another image of a Herbig-Haro object. And if you overlay this particular image over this section of the Earth, what do we see? We see the astrophysical jets, top and bottom. In the Middle East, it kind of clumps like this. These astrophysical jets are spitting stuff out in clumps, which kind of matches the Middle East. All right. Now, I know I'm going fast, and it's okay if you don't fully understand this. I have a video on this if you want the deeper dive. But it essentially created and split apart the Middle East. And if you take a look at a map of this region, there's this line that goes straight here. And if you account for the rotation of the Earth, something impacted right here, and an astrophysical jet spewed something out this way. And for whatever reason, the northern half of this thing was much more had much more dramatic effect than the southern half of it. I'm skipping over a little bit. Just go with me here. Okay? So meaning to say that this plasmoid was so big that it created all this devastation here on Earth. In my opinion, I think it unites the competing Younger Dryas hypotheses, because this thing would have been spinning. Again, this is just a slice, but this is three-dimensional. It would have been spinning. All of this stuff here is uplift, and all of this stuff here is depression. It's coming up on this side and being forced down into the earth. So that's why we have uplift here, and we have a depression over here. And that would have thrown up a lot of material from this part of the earth and thrown it this way. Okay, so we have something electromagnetic possibly coming from the sun. We don't know exactly where its origin was. It could have been spewed out of the sun. I asked Stefan Burns about this. Dave, you had Stefan Burns on your show, right?
Yeah, twice. Love that guy.
Okay. I asked Stefan Burns, is it possible for a plasmoid to be ejected by the sun? And he said yes. Stefan knows his stuff. So I'm like, okay, that is a possible source where this thing came from. So in my opinion, I think that accounts for what Robert Schoch is trying to say. This solar outburst, something came out of the sun. And if it didn't come out of the sun, maybe it came from a different part of the galaxy and it just wandered into our solar system, and Earth had a very bad day. But it spewed up a bunch of material, which then probably came raining back down. Some of it went out into space, but some of it got trapped in our gravity and came back down. And if we look at the Younger Dryas impact field, it has this funky shape. And this is where Dan's thing hit, and it would have spewed stuff that way over towards the States, and it would have dispersed. Okay, we have a demonstration of what this might have looked like in the video for those curious. All right, so if we try to connect all of this stuff, how does this relate to Squatterman? Well, if you take a look at a Herbig Harrow, I'm cropping it just to show the central portion of it, we can kind of see that it has that formation. If we remember that this phenomena is scalable, you can have it on the micro scale, which is what Anthony Peratt was doing in the lab, and this is a lab simulated two-dimensional representation of it. You have the petroglyph over here, and you have this giant celestial object. Okay? We obviously see the similarities. Now, how does this relate to Dan's discovery? Well, right here, smack dab in the middle of this thing, burned into the earth, is a 150-mile Squatterman, right in the precise center. Okay? Now there's a twist to this. What we see, this is China, right here in the precise center. Remember we were talking about this central Q-tip portion of it, right? What we see is a Q-tip. There's the top, here's the long part, and what we see down here are the three. We see three instances of the bottom of the Q-tip, but notice the Q-tip is different at both ends. We have a larger end here and a smaller end here. We have a larger end here and we have a smaller end here. But why do we have three? And I asked Dan about this, and he says, well, this thing was spinning fast, okay? And if you have something spinning really fast through the process of diamagnetism, it's not quite magnetism, it's a stronger version of magnetism where essentially everything is magnetized. You just need enough magnetic force to apply. It's a whole thing. That it will actually uplift geology and produce these effects. This thing is burned into the earth. It's 150 miles long. There it is. Now, we don't see the arms and legs. That's the twist. We don't see the arms and legs. But we do see the central component of it. And we still have to figure out, well, why do we not see the arms and legs? And Dan says, well, the plasmoid itself is just the Q-tip portion, okay? And what we see here as the arms and the legs is the bottom portion and the top portion of the toroids themselves, which is the magnetic field of the plasmoid. It's complicated stuff. Now, I explain all of this to you Well, I'll get to that in a second. Let's come back to this Herbig-Haro object for a second. If you take a look at this illustration here, we're examining electric universe just one step further, okay? Does this here remind anyone of a different celestial phenomenon?
A black hole.
Judge, you already know the answer.
It also ejects things.
Right.
I think.
It does. If you go to NASA's website right now, you'll see images like this. You will see astrophysical jet. They call it a relativistic jet. Okay. Artist illustrations of black holes have these astrophysical jets shooting out the top and bottom. They have this accretion disk, or what they call an accretion disk. Okay. But you all remember this type of thing. For anyone who's seen Interstellar, this is the big thing that they go watch, that they go to in the movie. And what we're seeing here is this accretion disk warping. Okay? You see how it's warping? They say that it warps like this due to the effect known as gravitational lensing. There's so much gravity that light itself is bending. I've got a video coming out where I'm going to deconstruct just why that's wrong based off of scientific research done by, again, people smarter, much smarter than I. It's not that the lensing is caused. It's not. That's not what's actually happening here. Again, this is just an artist's rendition. And again, remember, if we go back to my science experiment here in the living room I did with Dan, look at how similar these things are. When I went to go interview Don Scott, he's the elderly gentleman who told me that planetary bodies have charge and that they can discharge between the two. I went to his house and I sat down with him, and before we started rolling cameras, he told me, and I quote, he said, "Black holes are bullshit." And I'm like, okay, maybe you got something there, but you gotta get me there. I don't know what it is you're talking about. And now that I've gone through this whole process with Dan, I think I finally understood what he's talking about. Black holes are not these vacuum cleaners like we think they are. According to Electric Universe, folks, black holes are plasmoids. They look and operate the same. The center component of this thing, this Q-tip, is right here. It's invisible, essentially, until it comes into contact with an atmosphere of a planet. But out in outer space, it in and of itself is invisible. It's only when it interacts with gas that you start to see. This is all gas that it's interacting with. Otherwise, it's invisible. What does that sound like? It sounds like a black hole. It's invisible until it starts interacting with the stuff around it. So when you see something like this, that's so simple and explains the shape, the weird shape that this thing has, the reason why the explanation for gravitational lensing doesn't work is because they've actually photographed the stars. And I don't have this slide, but just hear me out. They've actually photographed the stars that orbit the black hole that is at the center of our galaxy. But what happens is the stars, when they pass behind or near the black hole itself, they themselves are not being subjected to any gravitational lensing. It's because the gravitational lensing isn't actually occurring. What is occurring when the stars pass by themselves is some type of lensing, but it's not based on gravity. It's based off of refracted light, like what happens when you look at a straw that goes into your glass of water. The straw doesn't go in a straight line. It gets refracted, okay? I'm tossing a lot of this at you because I need to explain this, because it is my position that I think, first of all, number one, Dan has the unifying theory about what happened to the Younger Dryas. But not just that. If cataclysms on this scale have happened to Earth, okay, this is a lot of cataclysm. If cataclysms on this scale have happened to Earth and our atmosphere is still here, I don't believe that these electromagnetic events had anything to do with the loss of the Martian atmosphere. I needed to explain all of this because these are catastrophic events on a planetary scale, yet our atmosphere remains. I have one final portion, which is what NASA has to say. Before I do, any questions? No. So, our atmosphere, blue planets have thick atmospheres. Mars used to have a thick atmosphere, just like Earth. Essentially, we have 1 bar of pressure. Okay, Mars used to have about the same thing, around 1 bar of pressure, but it no longer has 1 bar of pressure. It has less than 1%. What's that? A millibar. It has basically less than a millibar of pressure, of atmospheric pressure. Okay, so what happened to the atmosphere? The next time we get together, we're gonna talk about that specifically. But I'm going to tell you what NASA has to say about it, okay? Like Earth, Mars once had a strong magnetic field. Now it's very weak. It still exists, but it's not quite as strong as Earth's.
It's actually in pockets on the planet. It's quite strange.
Yes, it is.
There's pockets of magnetism.
Yes.
Very, very weird.
It is. NASA says that the solar wind has stripped away the Martian atmosphere. Okay? Now, they say this because, well, due to Mars not having a strong magnetic field and due to its lower gravity, we think that's why Mars no longer has an atmosphere, is because the solar wind from the sun has stripped it away. It doesn't has the same protection and the same gravitational force that Earth has. Okay? This is what NASA has to say. This guy, Bruce Jakosky from NASA, in 2017, okay, it's quoted as saying in his paper, we determined that the majority of the planet's carbon dioxide was also lost to space by sputtering. He's basically saying sputtering, which is when ions get picked up by the solar wind and slammed into the top of the atmosphere. Essentially, the solar wind slamming into the atmosphere and splitting it up and sending it out. He says, over time, this leads to significant atmospheric erosion. This is what Bruce Jakosky says from NASA. It's the solar wind. In 2017, that's what he says. Now, Bruce Jakosky in 1993 said something completely different in his paper, saying that the total amount of carbon dioxide lost over geologic time is probably on the order of tens of millibars rather than a substantial fraction of a bar. The total loss from solar wind-induced sputtering does not seem to be able to explain the loss of a putative thick early atmosphere. In other words, the solar wind doesn't quite explain the nearly complete loss of the atmosphere. So Bruce Jakosky in 1993 was singing a very different tune than he was in 2017. Now, you might think, I'll come back to that, okay? In addition to this, another paper was published a few years ago, and thanks to Allison Brown for notifying me of this. But this team of scientists say, contrary to what has previously been believed, magnetization is not a sufficient condition for protecting a planet from atmospheric loss. They ran the numbers. This thing's called why an intrinsic magnetic field does not protect a planet against atmospheric escape. They ran the numbers and basically said it doesn't matter that Mars's magnetic field is weaker. Whether it's strong or whether it's weak, has no bearing on atmospheric escape. Now, you might think, well, this guy, Bruce Jakosky, learned some new things and thus started changing his tune from 1993 to 2017. And you might think NASA thinks that this is a case closed. We've got this figured out. It was the solar wind. We already know. Case closed. There's no reason to study this further. NASA has a new mission. They're going to send a new mission to Mars. I think it's called Escapade. Okay? NASA is sending probes to Mars to find out why it lost its atmosphere. In other words, this is dated 2025 in November. In other words, NASA still doesn't really know. They cannot explain it using their data, and they're sending a whole new probe there to see if they can try to explain this using the terms that they understand. So while they continue to message to the public, we know it's the solar wind, stop asking questions, they still don't know.
I wonder if it didn't burn up due to something that happened. It burned. It physically burned up.
Next time we get together, John, we're going to be getting into what destroyed the atmosphere of Mars. Guys, I know that was lengthy. Thank you very much for going through all that with me. But I had to explain all that because while people like Robert Schoch and the Electric Universe folks think that electrical discharge has something to do with the eradication of the Martian atmosphere, my argument is that we've had such strong catastrophic electromagnetic discharge events here on Earth, yet our atmosphere is still here. The solar wind doesn't explain it. So I have to say all that because what does explain it is something far more terrifying we'll get into later. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for going through that with me.
My presentation might drop a hint as to what happened, but I won't say anything.
Let's not spoil it. But anyway, so I know Jean's got some stuff to show us, but is there any questions relating to any of that?
That's a lot. I just wanted to look up that. I looked up that Escapade mission. What they're doing is they're using two identical satellites flying together. One measures the incoming solar wind, while the other simultaneously measures the atmosphere escaping. That's interesting. That must cost a shitload of money for them to do that. And why would they do that if they already knew? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and before I forget, let me just take this moment. Dave and I were talking about this a little while ago. These Mars disclosure live streams that we're doing are very presentation heavy on my part. It won't always be like that. I feel like there's a need just to get you and everybody else who's tuning in kind of caught up to speed with the whole story thus far. And there's a lot to Mars. I mean, what we're talking about is the last 50 years of research, and it's a lot. It ranges from microbes to fossils to pyramids to whatever the hell it is we're talking about today. So, I don't intend on these things being these long presentations. I want this to be a lot more of a group discussion sort of thing. But to get everybody caught up to speed, that's the sort of what we have to get through. I have one more presentation we'll do next time, but after that, we can start changing up the format. So I want to thank you guys for your patience in going through these presentations with me.
I also just want to thank Brian for his passion and dedication to putting all this together, because it's a giant puzzle that you're pulling from like a bunch of different places and trying to put it together. And I don't think anyone else is doing this in the way that you're doing it. What I mean by that is you're taking all this research from all these different places and trying to put it into one grand picture of what happened. And it's complicated. And so I just want to thank you, man. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. No thanks necessary. You're preaching in the choir when it comes to having too much information and a big story that you're trying to sort of get together. I totally understand. So I'm here for it, man. I'm just happy you're trying to sort of paint the picture for us, so we don't have to go and do all this work on our own, man.
You guys are so kind. My goal is to try to get other people tuning in and covering this. I don't want to be the only one doing it. It's just that there's a lot and people don't know any of this stuff. So we kind of have to do the education part up front, and then we can sort of I want people to help me figure this stuff out. I've got my views. Ricardo, I knew you've been looking at this stuff for a while too. But it helps to get more voices involved after you've sort of learned all this stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, that's sort of, with UFO disclosure, like it used to be called, there was 70 or 80 years of history and research. It's all been nullified when they changed the name to UAP. They got lazy. They're discarding that history since, 1938, up to now. It's gone, missing.
I want to cue Jean up here, but Jean, you got your slides ready?
Ricardo's trying to show something quick. So
Oh,
let's let
okay.
Ricardo show him. And I also wanted to say that escapade mission is estimated to reach $94.2 million by the time it's said and done.
Jeez. Yes.
$94.2 million. What are we looking at, Ricardo? You're muted, brother. I'm gonna try to unmute you.
I'm sorry, I forgot I was muted. So this is USGS, U.S. Department for Geological Service, and I just wanted to share related to what Brian has been brilliantly teaching us. Mars is very different from the North and from the South. This is the North Pole, and this is the South Pole. White is going down in
Allowing elevation, yes.
So it's like it has two sides. It has one side of depression and it has one side of. So they think that this area, if it has an ocean, it would be half an ocean, half land planet.
Yes.
Right? When we look at what, because this allows enormous amounts of zoom, it's a huge image. You'll see that this area that Brian was talking about has all these features. Show it in more detail because this can go way deep into this. I don't know if this is still available online, but in here we get perception of the two sides of Mars.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up, Ricardo, because most of the anomalies I find are in the southern mid-latitudes of Mars. Yeah, that's where all the anomalies are. Some of the pyramids are up in the northern mid-latitudes, close to the equator, in that band. It's very, very interesting. But yeah, shall I start my presentation?
Yeah, let me just cue you up here. I asked John to put together a slideshow here because I really want your guys' opinion on what it is that we're looking at. I haven't yet made sense of this, and I've been holding off on doing any reporting on it myself because I'm not sure what to make of it. Maybe some of you guys have seen some of this stuff before. John has cataloged hundreds of these things, what he's about to show, and I don't know. I'm on the fence about what it could be, but this is one of those things that I think would benefit from having a group of people actually looking at it and just discussing it. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Cool, dude. Thanks. So can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, I'm sharing. Should I reshare?
It's coming.
Oh, it's coming. Okay.
Here we go. We got it.
Okay. The NASA sources in which I found the anomalies, the links are there if you'd like to go and check it out for yourselves. So yeah, huge cataclysm, catastrophes, devastation all over the planet. What happened to potential megalithic structures? They will no longer be neatly packed together into pyramids or into temples or whatever there was on Mars. Everything's been uplifted, scattered about all over the place. The megalithic blocks I'll be showing you, some are still intact. Many of the others have been, I don't know, tossed up in the air, fell down in random places. Then there might have been a tsunami or two, flooding, and everything was covered in sand. But what we can see are these strange megalithic blocks. that's potentially megalithic blocks. Obviously, we need to land there and walk around these things and hop on top of them and analyze them to see if they've got cut marks and all those things. But there's interesting phenomenon with these things. Right in their centers, they've got these strange protrusions, or they're also called knobs. So what are the chances of, so for example, a dried out lake bed, when it cracks up, you'll get funny patterns and things that are caused, when it dries out. But why are there these things in their centers? That doesn't make sense. And I'll show you what does, in my opinion. This is at a ruin in Delphi, Greece. We've got these huge megalithic blocks, and they've got these strange knobs or protrusions on them. These are almost in the centers. But yeah, you can see there's some type of pattern here. There's another example. And these are slightly more South American. If you check out the blocks, they've got these strange knobs on them, or protruding parts. Yeah, they're still sort of neatly next to one another. And I reckon what possibly happened here was this was flooded. It was very muddy. And whatever there was, so for example, this was a wall. It sunk and it toppled over into the mud. And that's why the blocks are still next to one another. And I compare them to those blocks that you find in Peru with the knobs on the sides, close to the sides of the blocks, as you can see there in that example. And these blocks are huge. They measure between 5 to 10 meters across. So we aren't talking about, SUV or vehicle-sized blocks here. We're talking about a room size, like a garage, even bigger. Then we've got these loose standing blocks. They're no longer standing next to each other in rows. This block is also about 8 meters across. And right in its center, it's got this strange symbol or part. But again, it's right there in the center. And again, I'm just using that as an example. Right, then we get to this strange item. In the middle of nowhere, it's about 6 by 6 meters in size. It's a perfect square, and it's got this small part right in its center. Some of my YouTube subscribers have commented in the past, could these be blockhouses, pillboxes, underground bunkers that have been uncovered, and those are the lids or entranceways? And that is quite plausible. If you look at a pillbox or a blockhouse that was built during the Second World War, they've also got these smaller structures on top, right there in their centers, a lot of them. So could we be looking at outposts, derelict outposts, pillboxes, or, these blockhouses or underground dwellings with the lids on top? There's another one. This one's a bit bigger. It's about 8 by 8 meters in size. And again, it's got something in its center. But this to me looks more like something had landed there. I don't know. If you look at the conventional magnified image, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spheres around a middle one. But yeah, this is also rather strange. Right there in its center. I'll take questions just now. And again, are we looking at something that was built? Was there a war possibly on the planet, like Mars, the god of war, you know? And there's another one. This thing's also about 8 by 8 meters in size. And it's got that thing on the top.
I think about when Brian showed the Valles Marineris from that one angle and said, "Where did all the rubble go?" And we said, you know, in the atmosphere, in space, and also out into the like
it got
onto the
scattered.
planet, raining down onto the planet. That's why it seems all scattered about. You know, all these
Yes.
pictures you show us are
Jason
all
is thinking, I've seen
scattered.
that. I've seen that.
Right? There's pieces everywhere. That looks like a disaster, no doubt. That sure does.
Yeah.
Some megalithic building society got blown to smack. You don't have to tell me what happened there. I see it.
And then there's a weird phenomenon on a lot of these large pieces. You've got 3 little knobs or protrusions arranged in triangular shapes. Now we're looking at one with the sort of triangle depicted, and it's got a small hole right there in the center as well. And this is also huge. This thing's about 10 meters across. Now, what is the purpose of these 3 triangles? The 3 parts that are arranged in triangles? And that too, I find all over the place. Now, if you look at this item to the left, I forgot to put in the location. I'm sorry. This is in South America. I think this is from the lost city of the Inca. Look at the
It looks like Peru, yeah.
look at the top part. There's 3 parts arranged in a triangle.
Oh, good eye, John. Yeah.
And this is only one example. There's more of these in Pumapunku. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Also, little triangles depicted on the blocks and things. So could this be a fragment on Mars that broke off a larger piece, and we're only seeing the top part with a triangle on it? What was the purpose of this triangle anyway, on this huge stone here on Earth? And then the row of them over here, you see that on Mars as well. I'll show you an example now.
It's Braille for giants.
I don't know, dude, it's weird, man. There,
I like
Man,
this.
they hung heavier rocks onto the rock. You know what I mean? Like if you had a big rock sign and you wanted to advertise, hey, this is, you know, where you get your hot meats at the megaliths, you know, and you just hang it on there.
I like this take. We fought Mars. We're just blowing each other up, and we won. They were scattering bits of our megalithic structures all over the place, and we were doing the same thing.
check it.
And we won.
This is not like an obelisk. This is weird.
It does.
It's like a little spire or something. But check it on it. A triangle.
John, am I interpreting this correctly? This rock is standing up. It's casting a
Yes.
shadow.
The shadow.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
And
sort
then-
of like 45 degrees.
Okay, but
It's tilted over.
it has these protrusions on the side, and for them to be there and not falling down, it would require them to be attached to this thing. So
Yes, yes.
that's
That's
strange.
another theory.
Okay.
Are these things on the blocks attached, or are they part of the block?
See, John
That
has
is
found
also another question.
dozens, if not hundreds, of these blocks with these little tiny either blocks on top, right in the center, or protrusions. I don't know. And that last one I hadn't seen yet before, John. Oh, keep going. This looks good.
Okay, cool. This thing's about 12 meters in length. Look at the symbol depicted on it. I don't know what to compare it to here on Earth.
This is so good stuff. I just don't know what to do with it.
Look at the perfect geometry and symmetry of that pattern.
Yeah, and there's a triangle right there next to it, laying in the dirt. Yeah.
There's lots of these too.
I'm blown away by when you show, before you zoom in on each one of these, when you show the wide. Yeah, that. I mean, come on, man. That just goes to the heart of what we're saying. Like right there, John, I can just scan around and see at least 3 just scanning with nubs on them.
Yeah,
you know.
can.
And
Yes.
when I try to find a natural explanation for this picture you're showing me, this landscape with these massive 12-meter sized pieces, it's just silly to me that everybody's not entertaining the same questions we are.
I agree.
Has anyone watching either in the chat? Go back to that last one, John, or on the panel here, like seen this anywhere else on Earth? And like, is there something we can compare this to? Because I don't think there is.
The multi-shaped
No.
angles on the block do remind one of Peru, and that's about the only place you hear me say when, what does this
with
stuff
the nubs
remind
and
me
stuff.
of? The nubs and the not the hexagonal, but the angle shape to the stone itself, is sort of reminiscent of those walls.
The nubs have shadows too, so they must protrude
They do.
significantly.
Mm.
Sorry, you can keep going.
I've seen similar blocks to this with large circular parts in the centers with smaller parts arranged around them in this sort of pattern as well, with a large round part in the center. But yeah, I didn't include that example here. Okay, so yeah, are those we just featured. So let's have a discussion. What do you guys think? What happened? Yeah, we can see some of the blocks still in rows next to one another. And then these things are all over the place with like 100-meter distance between them, 200-meter distance between them. What happened? And what could these things be?
So
I don't know.
these are all, like you said, from the same general area, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
The 2 to the top left are from Argyll Planitia.
Okay.
Yes, but the others are all over Mars.
Yeah,
All
and
over Mars.
John has got dozens of videos. Like he's showing you like 10% of these things that he's found.
No, 1%.
Yeah,
It's
One-
ridiculous. I don't know what the hell these things are. Why would there just be these little tiny? If it's just like, imagine if it was just a matter of a random scattering of blown out material. Let's just say, why would there be so many tiny little rocks landing on top of larger rocks, kind of in the center, kind of looking kind of smooth? I don't know what to make of this.
with like almost right angles in most cases.
NASA reckons this was caused by glacial movement over the surface. The stacking of smaller blocks on top of larger ones, or smaller objects on top of larger ones. Glacial movement, yeah, the bottom one, definitely.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up, man. Look, I find, not to even bring it back to me, but I find so much of this in the landscape here in Alabama where you've got these bigger rocks with these much larger, nobody damn lifted it, rocks on top of it, right? And we didn't have we didn't have glaciers, right? And the same thing here. I did a special on this last week. They described the mountain ranges around here as being erosive, but when you go to them, they're these big piles of rocks, like what you show us here. And that's not erosion, man. You can tell me it is all day long, but it doesn't do that. It doesn't deposit a rock on top of a square rock repeatedly. And as soon as you zoom out, John, all I see is a whole field of this stuff. So that was one artistic damn glacier. Considering, first of all, we don't even know there were glaciers there, right? They use that, I mean, we really don't. That's a guess. So why are we going with a guess instead of our natural intuition? When I see this on Earth, what do? I send men and money and archaeologists, and I go, all right, let's go see what that is. That's a ruin. I don't entertain what ifs. I don't go, well, there might have been a glacier that was very artistic in the region.
Yeah, I know.
An
This is in
artistic
the,
glacier.
these are from sites in the
Well.
southern mid-latitude of Mars, if that helps. So from the equator down south to the mid-latitudes. So it's not near the South Pole.
Ricardo, what comes to mind when you look at this stuff?
Well, I'm much as enlightened as you are around this. I don't know what to do with it. It's obviously something. But what
Can I
is
show
it?
you, like, can I show you a random selection of others?
Can we
Sure.
get everyone else's take on that?
What I see is, especially on the first image grand plan that you showed, zoom out, I clearly see the possibility of it being something, some kind of organized structure. No, not this one, the one that you showed before this one.
This one?
No, the very first that you show us, before you zoomed in.
Shall I go up still?
No, the first zoom out that you showed us. That. Okay, in here, was this the first one?
Yes.
You can see straight lines and arrangements and entrance. You can use your imagination to see lots of things here, but it's not different of what you will find in the destroyed area. But it's all these protrusions on the rocks that are, I mean, here, that's the image that I was looking for. In here, you can see several rectangular structures. It's not so different from some images you'll find in ruins around the Earth.
Yeah.
And you can see housings to the left, maybe. You can see a big central house in the upper right. You see the rectangular. I can clearly see possible arrangements of previous structures.
Foundation.
And it's exactly, and it's all in pieces. Exactly. Big
This one
ones.
right here.
And you see divisions. If you go to the left, you see even divisions inside. It might all be conjecture, but you can see depressions that would be maybe houses of different sizes or even rooms within those structures. But if it is or not, I can't say. But I can see it, and the way it's destroyed is very compelling to imagine that this was something, right? But it's those protrusions on the rocks. Because nubs is something that nobody can explain. There's many ideas, but nobody can explain what nubs are, right?
Well, Electric Universe people have an explanation for it. They think it's where things have discharged. So you know that.
So many other groups have, right? So
yeah,
even academics, they say that they will be using to lifting. Well, I dare anybody to try and lift with this.
I don't know if the
center of gravity to lift these things.
I mean, this structure in Greece was definitely built. It wasn't caused by electrical discharge.
No, the thing is, the problem with nubs.
I don't know. We need to go there and check.
Yeah, the problem with nubs is the block was all of the thickness of the nub that you see there. They have to purposely, intentionally cut the rest of the block and leave just that section out. So it's intentional and purposeful. It takes a lot of time to carve everything around stone and leave the nub out. That's how the nubs are created, right? So
they melted the rock, and that was a mold.
Geopolymer. If you want to go in that
material in.
Geopolymer can explain a few things, but like the electric universe and so other ideas, they can't explain everything. So, and Brian, you already picked up the microphone twice. Go ahead.
That's the thing. It doesn't have to, right? I mean, geopolymer doesn't have to explain everything if some of it was geopolymer, you know? When you were just showing there the walls, I mean, some of this shit does look like a concrete mold, you know? It just does. And as you say, Ricardo, to chunk away, man, if a nub is 5 inches, that means I'm spending my time taking away 5 inches of stone by 3
on
feet
the whole
by
block.
4 feet on the whole block. Right. It makes it just doesn't make any logical sense. That's why they're so enigmatic, I guess.
Sarah, Megan, does anything come to mind intuitively when you look at this stuff? I guess my question is, Jean
Yeah.
puts forth
Stay here.
Jean puts forth this argument that these are perhaps analogous to these nubs that we see here on Earth. We typically see nubs, just playing devil's advocate here. We typically see nubs coming out from the side of these rocks, and here on Mars we're seeing them come out of the top. So maybe it's a good comparison, maybe it's not. I'm having difficulty with this because intuitively I'm not sure what to make of this, and this is why the wisdom of crowds can help inform some of this stuff. Sarah, Megan, this is really just open for interpretation. Anything goes. There's really nothing that makes sense to anybody. So curious to know what intuitively comes to mind for either of you two.
Yeah, we need some feminine intuition into this.
I'm at just as much of a loss as you guys are, but I'm also on a freaking side quest over here. So thanks for that, because when I see the rocks with the stack on top, and I've seen the nubs that come out of the side like we have here, but those with the rocks on top, for some reason, the first thing that I thought about was like people who stack rocks for like spiritual purposes. And like specifically, I was thinking about the movie Moana, where they stack the rock on top of the pile, like the chief stacks the rock, and where that may have originated from. But I looked it up and it turns out that's not a thing. That was an artistic liberty that they took, but that people do stack rocks in various cultures as a spiritual practice. And someone in the chat mentioned something about an SOS symbol. So that was where my mind went.
Could these be markers only to be seen from space or from the air?
Right.
Like those giant.
That one, the second one on the top row reminds me of Bimini Road. Just
it does. I was thinking about that as well. It really does look like that.
Right. Yeah, you guys see it too.
In Canada, we have Inuksuks, which is like the stacking of the rocks. Often they make like a human type figure, but we're stacking rocks all over the place in Canada, so I could get down with that.
Yeah, Karen, that's also boulder stacking. Karen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That one in the middle, I was just going to point that one out.
This one in the middle?
Yeah,
that's a long block and a small block.
That's
they still tightly next to one another. Check out here to the right. There's one on its own, and the bottom center, there's a smaller one on its own.
And John, is it possible to try and detect which ones has the structure on top on the image? You think you can put it in an AI to calculate what are the probability if this was blown up? What is the probability of the stone that has an imbalance on top get the top on the top when it falls down? You see where I'm going? So calculate the probability of all the stones you can count on the image and which ones have the protrusion to the top, to calculate if it could be done by exploding everything, and that number is plausible to have what should be down on the top. You understand what I'm saying? Because if it is rotating and there is a weight in one side, it will push that side down.
Yeah, you see the block over here to the right could have a knob on it, but it's on the other side. It's not visible.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It would be a very low number of them having the imbalance on the top. So that would be a way to show that this could be the cause from a massive cataclysm, a massive explosion that threw the rocks into the air. Because when they fall down, the heavy part should fall down first.
Yeah, I'm with Ricardo on that.
And that's what I see what you're getting at.
That's all I think about when I see these is pieces of stone structures that were, ejected into the air and strewn across the planet, and landing in these weird patterns, and it's sometimes landing partially still connected and things like that. And I think these nubs are this is all potential, but speculative. But the nubs are part of the the engineering construction of the objects.
Yes.
Of megaliths.
Of megaliths, exactly.
You also find megaliths with holes in them here on Earth.
Pinch
Check
holes.
the one to the top left.
Can you zoom in on that one, top left, John?
The what? Say again?
Yeah, can you zoom in on that top left? That's weird, man.
No, I can't. Not in the presentation.
Okay.
And if Mars went through an insane plasma discharge, that would be enough to scatter this stuff all over the planet, in my opinion. And we're potentially seeing the remnants. But
yes.
And if you see what we are calling nubs, and on the other hand, we're seeing other stones, what we would call drill holes, though the drill holes fit the nubs. Are they male and female?
That's what I was thinking.
It's difficult to tell. They're scattered all over the place.
Like, what would be the probability if these things were just blown all over the place, that little tiny rocks would fall on top of a big rock and just stay there and not...
If they are hot enough, they would fall down soft and they would stay there when they cooled.
Well, what about you've got the obelisk though, or what do we want to call it? The little bent phallus there. Yeah, with its warts on the side. Those things are still on there. They're not laying on top. They're attached and they're still casting shadows. So I think that gives credence to these things not just being rocks on top of rocks, but actually part of the structure itself.
Yeah, I follow Brian on his thought, but would they all fit in the middle? Would they make an arc with 5 pieces around the stone?
Well, following that logic, Ricardo, if it was hot enough to stick, wouldn't it kind of splat and kind of go out?
Well,
and...
that one, the second to the left bottom, is more or less like that. It looks like you acted hot. No, the other one next to it. That one. Is splashed on top of it. But my problem with it is it's in the middle.
Yeah.
All of them, it's in the middle.
So can you guys understand, like, I don't know what to make of this. I see John posting this to his YouTube, and I'm like, this is odd. I don't see stuff like this on Earth. I don't know what to make of it. I don't have a good terrestrial comparison. And I think it's just simply the horizontal versus vertical orientation. Like, we see nubs, yes, and that seems like it obviously go to, but they're on a different plane. We're not seeing them horizontal. We're seeing them on a vertical, and I think that's just my own personal hang-up on this. Why would there be so many of these things? I mean, this thing with the shadow, I hadn't seen that before right now, Sean. This is incredible stuff. It's a vertical surface, so in that case, it actually kind of is more of a terrestrial comparison because the nubs are sticking out of the side. We have a large rock with things sticking out the side, casting a shadow. Like, that's strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we're looking at 1% of what John and other people have found, the bigger picture is like, because we're sitting here struggling with, like, a handful of images going, what the fuck? And, if we're looking at 1% of this, I think that's what makes that makes the argument that there's obviously something. We're looking at something, not nothing. It's not pareidolia. And I'm gonna see if I can pull up a picture of Bimini.
Let's see. See, Javier, to the bottom left, you've got 2 long blocks, and next to each, you've got 2 smaller ones.
Well, at least in my screen, it's covered by us. So I don't know if people at home are also being covered. You're pointing, but the images are covered by our cameras.
Can you change it, Dave, so that I can see the bottom part of this image, please?
You're muted, Dave.
There you
Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
Can you guys see it now?
Yeah.
2 long blocks and then 2 smaller ones next to each.
Hmm.
Yeah. And let me go like this here, and we can see it even bigger.
Thank you.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is.
This one on the bottom left, right next to Jean Ward's logo, bottom left. It almost looks like it's a large block that has been split up. Do you guys see it the same way?
Yeah.
And maybe that's just natural weather erosion processes. Sure. I don't know, man.
Yeah, but would all the rocks erode, and having all the rocks would have a central, harder point that would allow the rest to be eroded? And are there enough forces on Mars to create this kind of erosion? So,
Well, okay, so planetary geologists who study Mars, I mean, they want to attribute everything to geology, of course. And getting back to collapsed lava tubes, it's like it's like trying to describe all of the colors of the rainbow, but you're colorblind on red and green. So they want to try to describe it using the terms that they know, rather than introducing all of the variables that are involved. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the point. Maybe Ricardo, you're talking about getting these people together. These scientists, unfortunately, are very siloed. Okay, Robert Schoch is a brilliant man, but if it's
no doubt.
he is not unlike many other scientists. If it's not what they're doing, they don't want to entertain any of these ideas. So it is up to us, the generalists, who see the good in all of this work, to try to concoct a story around this, and hopefully one day we can get these experts in a room so that they can actually talk to each other, not at each other. So we are charting. Well, let's see. We're navigating uncharted territory, and so I think this work is important. We're asking the questions that we expect NASA to be doing. We here at home think that NASA is examining these images in the same way that we're doing here today and trying to make sense of these. But they're publicly, they're not. Privately, they might be, and we can only speculate. But it begs the question, like, if they're not going to do it, then who is? And that's where we come into play.
Jean, I'm going to steal your screen quick and just share Bimini Road. I don't know if you guys can see that. But that's the best picture I could find of it. But it's very similar to that one. So there you go.
But no nubs.
No nubs. No nubs.
It might be down or on the side.
Jean, do you have more? You're muted.
No, Dave, that's all we prepared for today. I wanted to entertain a group discussion on this because I can't make heads or tails of it, but I do think that it's worthwhile that John continues covering this. And John's the only one finding these types of things. You guys now see why I'm drawn to John's work, and like, this is the guy, man. Like, NASA should be doing this, but they're not. So we leave it to the one guy in South Africa. This one guy. I love you, John. Like, you're just amazing. And I'm gonna keep promoting your stuff, man, because it's incredible stuff. And I really want to thank you guys for entertaining me. Let me just toss something out here, and this is a hot take, okay? If what we're seeing on Mars is in fact the remains of an ancient civilization, these similarities that we see in pyramid construction, perhaps this is evidence of a singular, shall we say, intelligent civilization that started things up on Mars. Things went sideways. They had to relocate. They came to Earth. The timeline syncs up here. I don't have enough to really message hard on this right now, and I have to invoke mythological texts, metaphysical analysis, which we can get to later, which I have a presentation on. But, if in fact, because when we take a look at Egypt, we take a look at any megalithic structure here on Earth, we're still debating on how these things were constructed. We don't yet know, and I agree with Jeffrey Drum's interpretation of the pyramids. For those of you who understand his work, but
Dan Sutton in the house. Sorry. Shut
Yeah,
up, Dan Sutton.
He dropped in an hour ago, man. Where y'all been? He's been here a while.
my man Dan. Dan's great. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. I'm trying to get him online and getting him. Dan has a very credible way of explaining things, and I think he can really serve as that gateway for people who are new to the electric universe. So I'm really trying to get him involved. But I guess what I'm saying is, if what Jeffrey Drum is saying is true, that the pyramids in Egypt are not just what he thinks they are, chemical factories and things of that nature, but are evidence of a type 1 civilization on a Kardashev scale. Okay, an alien race comes to a new planet, has to start up manufacturing, has to start up civilization. How do they do that? They can't transport all of their factories to their home planet. They got to make use of the planet's natural resources. And if what we are seeing in Egypt and all over the rest of the planet is evidence of a type 1 civilization, then I would argue that what we're seeing on Mars is the same thing, but older and bigger. So, Dave, whenever we get around to making T-shirts, okay, I'm gonna propose Mars pyramids are older as one T-shirt. Mars pyramids are bigger, okay. If fucking Jay Anderson wants to have a dick measuring contest, okay, then fine, I'll go there.
Hey, Brian, just tell Jay I'm older and mine's bigger, and that can be the same slogan for Mars, man.
There you go, Shama. That's what's up, dude. Okay. Sorry, ladies.
I was talking about pyramids. What were y'all talking about? Get your minds out of the gutters, I swear.
Why are cell phones smaller than yours?
To entertain these ideas really requires us to depart from what the mainstream consensus allows us to think about, which is uncomfortable because it means you are stepping outside of the herd and adopting a narrative that isn't quite accepted by everyone. But intuitively, if you allow yourself, it does start to make a lot of sense. I am really trying to stick close to the evidence and for the images that speak for themselves, because as we all know, adopting this alternative narrative that we've been doing over the past however many years for each one of us, 5-10 years, stepping outside of the mainstream traditional narrative does require some courage. And there's a lot of courage just in adopting a different narrative as it relates to Egypt or Gunung Padang. Sorry, Megan. I'm drinking a little bit. These ancient structures. I think, for what it's worth, that episode 1 of Ancient Aliens, where they're showing the 3D and Danny out there and showing all this kind of stuff, like, it's mind blowing. Okay, and we're still just on Earth, so going to Mars is a whole nother thing, which is again why I want to thank you guys for entertaining this, because we're still debating this stuff here on Earth, whether it is or whether it isn't, and what the hell it is. So if we're moving the timeline back even further, that requires us to go to an entirely different planet. I mean, we are really talking about, and this is what we're going to get into next time. We're talking about real life Star Wars, real life Star Trek. But because real life doesn't necessarily work in the same way that fiction does, science fiction does, and vice versa, we have very few things to compare it to. So the challenge is harder for us to message to the public. So when we bring things up like what John has here today, it's sometimes hard to draw direct comparisons. So we have to throw it out there to see what everyone else has. Anyway, thank you guys.
Yeah, I've got
It
some
fits. It fits so many narratives.
some news, but I'm not allowed to divulge too much about this. You know that the orbiters have got LiDAR radar. They can scan into the surface of Mars. On the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, it's called CHARAD. And they've got radar scans of the huge pyramid that I found, and of those three that are arranged in the shape of Orion's belt. And those radar scans are found on the NASA site, on the CHARAD website, and Mr. Biondi in Italy is analyzing them.
What?
The guy that found the structures under the pyramids in Egypt.
Oh, please don't. See,
No,
I'm excited.
I'm not allowed to say more. I'm
This
not allowed
sounds
to
like
say
breaking
more.
we
news,
don't
man.
need more fantasy. There's enough fantasy already, right?
I like Filippo.
They're looking at it.
I like this. You guys don't
Okay,
see this as me.
we're going to talk about this later, John. Hey guys, listen.
Yeah.
We're at right over 3 hours.
Yeah.
Oh,
What
I
about
didn't know
quick
that.
I
questions?
love you guys,
I really have to go.
but everyone else has lives to get to, and
But what about, let's take questions, Brian. We
oh God,
promised
I'm
it.
sorry. Yes, we
Yeah.
Is there any question? Is there any questions in the
still fine.
chat?
I can go to bed a bit later.
I can do a few.
Like
I can do a few more minutes. If anyone has any specific questions for either Jean or Brian, in the chat, we'd love to take them. I also want to know what Sarah's cat thinks about all this. The cat's gone now, but it seemed super fluffy and intuitive. So, Brian mentioned a Type 1 civilization, and I last time I checked, we're at like 0.7 or some shit like
Right.
that.
Right.
We don't have a fully unified like economy and like global system of getting along. We can't fully control all the energy of the planet. So would they tell us? Maybe they can, maybe they can't. We're at this point of transition from into a Type 1 civilization. It's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous transition because you're dealing with a lot of energy, and also you're dealing with having to unite an entire species, an entire like conscious species, both of which are extremely dangerous. We could make it there in the next couple hundred years. And then I think we can start answering some of those questions. Somebody said this to me the other day. I can't remember who, but if humans like were just working together, like completely and fully, and had empathy with for each other, and they were able to, everyone's able to do what they do best and contribute to society as a whole. There's really nothing that we can't do. We're really that fascinating and that powerful. What's getting in our way is our current systems of economy and government, and we get into media control and all the egos. Ego is one of the biggest parts of it. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
And I just fucking wish that because I'm 44, I don't think I'm going to make it to the type 1 civilization where we can figure all this stuff out. And it's very disappointing to me. Maybe we'll get a fake alien invasion that'll unite everyone, and then we can start getting everything together.
We need the
Just
spiritual
remember,
component,
Regan,
Dave.
aren't these force already among us?
You got to have
We
the
need
spiritual component. You know,
Let's
type
do
1
a
is not just
CE5
about.
event.
It's
What
not just
about a
about
CE5
technology.
event, guys?
Say that,
Let's
Jason. I
come
think
in.
that's important.
Well, we got to have the spiritual component. I think that's what you were harping on. Type 1 is not just about tech, right? You know, I think when we study the lost civilization here on Earth, and this is to your point, Brian, about how I see an easy tie-in, man, with what people are already into. When you look at what we're talking about, this lost civilization, so many of the people who've spent their lives studying it, so much of what I have come across, but, you know, Graham Hancock, name all the guys, they'll lean into the fact that this was most likely a spiritually based, a sort of shamanic type civilization, right? They understood the 3D materialistic realm in a way which we today do not, right? So that's what puts us so far away from these tops. What I see, the correlation, Brian, that's so easy to sell, bro, is look, we have a narrative here on Earth about large people that built very large megalithic structures. I have in my work, I've run into American Indians, right? Chief Tuscaloosa himself was 8 feet tall, this bloodline that seems to be an amalgamation, it would seem, of some very tall people with some normal people, right? Well, what would happen over time if on another planet, some humanoid, just much larger humanoid, right, figures had built this civilization, it got destroyed, they came here? Well, then it would seem like that story would pick right up with many of our traditions that speak on these manners, from the book of Enoch to Christians to native traditions to so many other traditions of big things coming from somewhere else and starting to futz around here, to use a family-friendly word, right? So
Right.
I think it fits, and I don't think we have to start going for, you know, people think aliens and woo, and oh, I got to go all these places. Like, you really don't. You can stick with humanoids. You can basically stick with humans, and you can take it much back further and deeper into time than we currently do. It's just my 2 cents on it, though.
Yeah.
Megan, did you take the questions from the chat?
There
Have you got
is-
a summary of questions?
No, we weren't able to copy and paste them.
Oh.
So
I see one question here from
there's a couple.
Antonio.
Yeah,
I see a question from Antonio.
here it is. It said, could Mars' electromagnetic field have been weakened by the same cause that made the planet lose its atmosphere? Anyone?
You know, look, we can just say maybe, right?
It's possible. From the shock of those big things that happened, I'm not going to talk about them.
Well,
We're going to talk about them next week.
The question's getting answered next week.
We're going to talk about Dr. Brandenburg's predictions. It could have. Something like that could have caused it, Brian.
Right. It's a
But not
question. that
this
doesn't- yeah.
specific catastrophe. It could have, but the other two events, maybe.
Relating it to what we just talked about today, the electric universe theory proposes that it is not gravity that controls the orbits of the planets. That it is electromagnetic force, and that every planet. This was Michael Claridge was just on Matt Bell explaining this. For those who want to know more, go listen to that. But essentially, what it boils down to is this: every planet in our solar system is connected with an invisible filament, electromagnetic filament, of which they can measure. Okay, this is not just woo. This is something that they can measure.
Yes.
You can't quite see it with the naked eye, but it's there, and that is essentially holding it in place through magnetic.
It's like a huge LAN. There's
Still
lines between the suns, the galaxies, the planets. It's like a massive network. It's like an Ethernet network.
So if we're looking at the solar system more like electrical in nature, did the sun short circuit Mars and cause that Valles Marineris? It was this electrical. Maybe it wasn't just a coronal mass ejection. Maybe it was this filament thing that just sort of supercharged it because it had an abundance of energy that day and just fed it down that filament. These are things that I'm kind of a dummy on, that people like Michael Claridge can better explain the possibilities here. but there is evidence to suggest that they're electromagnetically connected, and perhaps what we're looking at is a short-circuited planet.
Yeah, and then what caused the Grand Canyon?
Yeah.
Another short circuit
Right.
from somewhere? Who knows?
Which could have happened, like, when talking about what's older and what's not older, like, relatively speaking, like, well, the planet's super fucking old. That could have happened, like, way before, like, we ever existed or life as we know it ever existed. And I think that's what Screwdriver Tuning is getting at with this question here. Could older on Mars be a product of a perspective viewpoint? If it got blasted worse based on current potential, would it seem to show something older? And I think that's an interesting way to look at it.
Well, I'm confused by this question, Dave. Help me out here. What is he saying?
Mhm.
It's not necessarily a question. It's more of a so it's just thrown this up. Pretend Mars and Earth were fighting or something, or they got hit by the same catastrophe or something like that. But the same thing happened to this same thing. If it got hit worse by whatever caused the Grand Canyon and whatever caused the Valles Marineris or whatever,
Yeah.
Mars got the shittier end of the stick. So could the stuff that we're looking at, the artifacts that we're looking at on Mars, just simply look older because of a worse catastrophe? That's
Yeah,
what
the Death Star went on to full power there, not just on one. You know, the Death Star in Star Wars, it also shoots out those plasmas.
It's yeah. I mean, the timeline I don't have quite figured out so much.
Why do they call it Mars, the god of war?
Well,
There must have been a cataclysm there.
Electric
The
Universe
light
has an explanation for that. Let
I'm
me
sorry, everybody, but I really have to go. So
Yeah,
thank you all.
no problem.
Okay.
Thank you,
All right.
Ricardo.
Ricardo, thank you for being
Joining
here.
us,
We're going to
dude.
start wrapping up anyway.
Till next
The
week.
questions are
Fly
done.
safe, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess relating
Bye-bye.
to the timeline, just really quickly,
Bye-bye,
you know,
Ricardo.
NASA says Mars lost its atmosphere 3 billion years ago. Even if they're wrong by 1 billion years, that's still a very long time ago.
Mhm.
I don't yet have enough evidence to the contrary to refute them on this claim. So I'm still inclined to believe them in this regard. But then again, it doesn't really sync up with what we're going to present. Next time, I can't be certain of anything at this point. So at this point, I think it's safe to entertain all possibilities related to the timeline.
I totally agree. Because we're in speculation land now, you know.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with large scales of time, large scales of energy, large scales of matter, and it's going to take a lot of coordination, and people like Jean and Brian, and I think what we're doing here as well, to put the whole picture together, you know?
Yeah, man, we can only take it so far, but we need to open it up to everybody else to like say, hey, look, what are we missing here? What are we doing here? Like, what do you guys think? Because intuitively, I think that enough people recognize that there's something going on here. They just need to see it. So it starts here. But
so there's this guy. He's been all up in the chat. Adam M8136. He sent pretty much all of us some stuff. He sent me some stuff on, but it's a lot. It's heavy stuff, and so. But like you said, when we have these conversations, people like him and others can put their perspective in their 2 cents. But this guy. I really got to take some time with what this guy sent
right,
because it's pretty.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, and thank you, Adam. I wanted to just thank everyone in the chat. The chat was totally hopping, like the Ricardo, Nina, Antonio, Adam, old Sutton Cicatrix there, Skywatch, Skywatch Signal, Screwdriver Tuning. I mean, we had a shitload of people who were here for this 3+ hour episode of Mars Disclosure Live, which I'm super grateful for.
Mm.
I'll put some outro music out as we go. I wanted to just say that I wish Sarah's cat was in here for longer. I really enjoyed that. I always appreciate when animals show up in the multiverse.
They pick up on the good frequencies.
We do too. If you have an animal, we want to meet it. Like that's how we are.
Yeah. You can find Ricardo on X, Facebook, YouTube. Can you throw up his stuff, Megan?
Sorry, yeah.
I just wanted to say, if you haven't subscribed to anyone or on YouTube or on X who's in the panel, it really helps us out a lot. So that's Ricardo's stuff there. It's also in the description. Sarah and Jacqueline from Universe Unveiled, they just did their news show today at 1 o'clock. They do it, no, I think at 11:11, right? You guys do it at 11:11?
We've been doing our live news about 1 o'clock Eastern every Sunday.
Okay. Sorry, I've been jacking your time slot with breaking ancient news. We got to figure that out.
You did that on purpose.
But tell us what you guys are up to and what's going on in Universe Unveiled.
Well, we just had a big guest that we recorded with last night. I gotta stay tight-lipped about it though. We recorded a good, interesting guest this morning, and so we got some good stuff coming on the way. Is what I'm driving at here. We're doing new episodes every other Wednesday, and we do our Sunday news segment every Sunday about 1. We've been doing it live, so everyone's welcome to come hang out, see what we've learned about over the week, and what the hot topics are in the alt history community.
Yeah, and Sarah and Jacqueline are a super fun and unique combo. They're definitely two peas from different pods that found each other, and they're besties. So it's really a good time. So, Jason, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you're up to? We'll throw where everyone can find you down there at the bottom there.
No, I don't want anybody to find me. I gave up people wanting to find me. It doesn't matter. No, Jason Huffman, you can find me at Shaman711 on YouTube. Come check out my series Antediluvian Alabama, where I find a lot of these anomalies like we're finding on Mars here in our home planet. I've also got a live streaming series, Finding Things Within and Without. I took the week off. I'll be back next week, and we'll start talking about this process of finding things both within yourself and here on this planet we all share. Thank you very much, Dave.
You can also find him intermittently joining me for live streams because Jason likes to entertain me with my, we got to talk about this, man. Somebody's got to go live and talk about this. We did one about the 11, now 16 missing scientists, engineers, and whatnot.
And we did the UFO documents.
Yeah, we went totally through every single UFO file that was dropped. It was a good time. So you can also find him on my show, and I appreciate you joining me, buddy. Brian's been all over the place lately. His stuff showing up on Instagram, X, I think Facebook. I don't know if you're on Facebook right now, but you're doing videos a lot. You're putting a lot of different stuff out there. What's coming up next for Brian?
Yeah, man, I'm just trying to get a video out every week, just in a more concise fashion for people to, understand what's going on with Mars. I got something coming out this week. I'm giving a cylinder update this week.
Nice.
You guys remember the cylinder we talked about? We got some updates there. And then next week, I got my whole thing about the reshot structure. So some good stuff coming out.
Awesome. And John is always chipping away down there in South Africa. He said he's showing us 1% of what he's put out there. There's a lot of people in the chat who are saying that too. Go if you want to see more of this stuff, go to John's channel. What can we expect next from you, man?
Okay, if you've watched my last video, in which I found more of these megalithic blocks with holes and protrusions, blah blah blah. I analyzed that photograph. It was 5 kilometers wide by 31 kilometers long. It took me 2 days to analyze that photograph. So that video is done and dusted. I'm working on another photograph, 5 kilometers wide by 32 kilometers in length. And you must see the stuff in there. It's going to blow your minds. I'm working on that next. And people can reach me on Jean Ward Mars on X, Jean Ward on YouTube, and my blog is megalithic.mars.com.
Awesome.
Thanks,
And
guys.
yeah, thank you. And Megan and I are, really proud of our show and what we've been doing lately. I think our last 3 guests cried on our show. We didn't make them cry. We're just really proud of the open and honest environment we create for our guests. We've got an episode coming out with Ty Roberts of the Total Disclosure podcast, where we go really into what modern UAP disclosure is. And he was a really interesting, really knowledgeable guy who's connected to like almost everyone in ufology, and he knows all the whistleblowers, and he was a really interesting guy. We've also got an episode coming out with Ryan Barthel on Friday. He's the producer of the Matt Bell podcast.
You got Ryan on? That's cool.
We did, and he's a great guy. He can shoot the shit about a lot of different things. We even had a whole conversation about Disney, but we talked about lost ancient civilizations, UAP, UFO disclosure, that kind of thing.
Cool. Ryan's a fun guy.
He is a fun guy. And the following week, we've got Sarah's counterpart, Jacqueline from Universe Unveiled. And Jacqueline is, I'm not kidding, one of the, if not the most brilliant person I know, as far as like being able to speak on and know about pretty much everything. And say what?
Got a big brain.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And she shared a bunch of insights about the future of AI with us. We also talked about consciousness and death. She worked as a palliative care nurse for like 12 years and has been with thousands of people who have transitioned to the other side. And it was a really, really deep discussion that I think everyone will enjoy. So, but yeah, Megan and I got lots going on. So please like and subscribe, right, Megan?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
And that's all we got for today. Fuck, 3.5 hours. Let's go. I actually thought today was going to be shorter.
I didn't
Be happy about it or anything, Dave.
I apologize. They're not all going to be this long, I promise, guys.
I was actually in my mind going, oh, this one's going to be like an hour and a half. But I enjoy these long form discussions. I think, look, the chat is, shows that, there were people who were here the whole time. They were like, I'm going to be making dinner, but I'm still listening, that kind of thing. So I think we're doing something good here. What's coming up, Brian, for next time?
We're going to get into Cataclysm Part 2. We're going to get into what I believe is the reason for the destruction of the Mars atmosphere.
Yes. And some of you may cry.
We got to go through the details necessary.
Some of you are going to cry if you know what happened.
Oh, no.
I stayed up for 3 nights. So after I learned this, and this is why I made the
Yeah, it's shocking.
One of these days, Oleg wasn't here. He's studying for his exams right now. He's got exams on Monday and Tuesday.
I was wondering
He's in university. But I'd like to have him present what he presented on my show, which just dropped on Friday, about the relationship of the golden ratio to the solar system itself, because I think it's relevant to our discussion, and it does involve catastrophism on the scale of the solar system, which I think relates. So we'll have Oleg back in 2 weeks. That is May 31st. Is everyone down for that?
Yep.
That's not Memorial Day, so.
Thank you,
And
Dave.
that's the day of the second full moon, isn't it, of the month? That's quite the date there.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Let's go. Let's
And
do
new
it.
moon was last night, too. We got
Yeah,
some
it sure was.
going on.
Yeah.
All right,
We're
everyone.
aligned.
Our next
Like-
19 years have been set. We're stuck with each other's, guys. That's
Let's do it.
Just 19? Oh my god.
I'll be, I don't know, 63. Jesus. Light, love, truth. That's what we're trying to do here. So until next time, love you guys.
Be the